In
Nobody's
real
gonna fight.
life,
I'd be a-
no
Yes, in real life.
shot.
There's no way.
In real
There's no
life.
way.
No
How many?
shot.
How many? How many?
No matter the gender.
There's
Yeah,
no
but the
way.
issue is that like
There's no way.
98%. Well, what do you mean? Of course that's true. What she just said.
They've,
Wait,
the
hold on,
women
let me
would
just,
feel-
let me,
let's say-
okay, wait. This is super clear. This is super easy, okay? Sex and gender are two different things.
incredibly racist, since it normally means that
Racist?
people. Hold up, let me
Love
finish.
it.
Let me
Let him
finish.
go.
Since it normally means that those who are financially disadvantaged have the least amount of access to some of these treatments and some of these things that would help you pass. Meaning that it would overwhelmingly be POC, people of color.
They can stay whatever prison they were born
That's-
in.
Here's the
Whoa.
here's the thing.
So Destiny, I'm curious because I recently saw some articles coming out of Scotland that I thought were really interesting, and I want to ask you. This is your favorite topic, the trans topic. I want to ask you: do you feel as though trans women should have access to women's spaces and it should be normalized?
Probably not.
No.
No.
Why?
Well, wait, hold on. When we say women's spaces, what do we mean?
Be it restrooms, change rooms,
Oh,
sports rooms,
Sorry,
whatever.
I
it
was
might
thinking,
be.
I was thinking like fucking college sports. I'm sorry. I think at that point it depends on how much the person passes. I think like 95% of women, trans women, will be able to start themselves appropriately. If you're getting
How
somebody
much
who's-
they pass? What do you mean by that?
like if you like Blair White is not going to be going into a boys' bathroom ever, and she probably shouldn't be, right?
So you think we should acknowledge their transness based off how much effort they've put into looking like the stereotype of a woman?
A little bit, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's
some
a
people
hot
get real
take.
triggered about that, but when people say that like I'm a trans woman in their profile and they've got like full on beards and they present masculine in every way, I don't consider that a trans person. That's just somebody on Twitter that's really
Ooh,
hungry for
Can I
attention.
tell you guys
So-
a story?
Yes.
go ahead. Well, I just want to say quickly, after my assault, I went to a women's support group, and I really, really loved going there. It was really a safe space for me. It was so important. And then this very nice woman joined who happened to look like one of my brothers with a beard. And I was like, hey, I really love this space. Why are you here? And they were like, oh, I'm a woman. And I was like, okay. And then I just stopped going because, again, it's not my space. It's not my job. But I will say having a woman's space with a male presenting looking person is really difficult to process. Sometimes in support spaces, but in every other space, like I'm super into LGBT things. I'm pro-trans, obviously, super pro-trans. And I'm very comfortable with most people in most spaces. I'm super comfortable going to the men's bathroom and all that stuff. But holy crap, in a support group, the last thing you want to see is a trans woman who isn't passing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's really fucking hard.
I mean, okay, when you say passing, what does that mean? Like, if you
doesn't
if
remind
you-
me of a man.
Oh, okay. So I got a big problem with this framework. Now, I don't believe in this kind of stuff, but considering what I understand to be the framework on this kind of conversation, if you're saying what is, I think most people can look at a trans woman and tell it's a trans woman. So even if they're making an effort,
Oh.
them passing is just not going to be very likely. So by your idea, most of them would not be admitted to women's spaces because most people can tell a trans woman is a trans woman.
I think the trans women that get on TV are different than the ones I usually meet because I usually can't tell as much, but sometimes like they're passing enough. Like, look, if ContraPoints came to a women's support group, nobody would get triggered. She doesn't look like a man. She's a woman for all purposes. Like Natalie Wynn looks like a woman, acts like a woman, lives as a woman. Like I don't think would trigger anyone who was afraid of men.
I will say that
Personally.
like this is super anecdotal, and I acknowledge that. But I think that you, it sounds so bad to say, but I think you tend to see like the worst of the worst online. I think in
Oh, yeah.
real life, like trans women tend to be a lot different than what you see online. Like they make a
I think
decent
so.
effort to be like femme presenting. A lot of them pass and you have no idea about it. But like it's one of those things where it's like, even I do this shit where I'll be like, I hate plastic surgery and I hate the way that it looks. And I'll say shit like that. But then like somebody will check me eventually like, well, hold on. How do you know when you've seen plastic surgery that looks good? You probably don't even know. You probably just think it's natural. It's like, actually, yeah, probably. So I think it's one of those things where like you'll see every trans woman that doesn't pass, but you won't see the ones that do because you'll just see a woman.
Okay, even if I grant you guys, okay, maybe there's a bias there. Do you guys believe that most trans women pass?
I think trans women with resources.
No, okay,
I don't
exactly.
think
A lot of
so.
them don't have resources,
Yeah, I
so
don't-
basically
probably
this is
not.
also
Yeah.
discrimination on a financial level because poor trans women would no longer have access to spaces because they can't afford the surgeries that they would need in order to be able to pass. So there's already discrimination there on a financial level, meaning they would not be able to feel safe because they can't afford to look like the traditional idea of what a woman is. And so by that, you guys are inherently being transphobic in a way or encouraging transphobia because you're gatekeeping poor people.
Yeah,
Which I think is terrible.
That's a
Well,
huge
hey.
anti-transmedicalist
Whoa,
argument. yeah.
whoa. Somebody just screamed in my ear.
Was that me?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was you.
My bad.
Do you want to
Sorry,
go?
Too close to the microphone. My bad. I didn't mean
Okay.
to. I was just gonna say, when I've been in like females' bathrooms, the only times I've ever been jump scared is by like butch lesbians, and even then, I'm like, am I in the right bathroom? So I go back out and just check. But like, I like that. Isn't that just kind of weird towards sort of, you know, like cis women that might look more masculine as well?
Can I tell you how many times people have been like, "Are you a man?" I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Are you trans?" And I'm like,
In
no, but
real
even if I
life,
was, I'd be a-
no
Yes, in
No way.
real life.
There's no way.
In
There's
real
no
life.
way.
No.
How many?
shot.
How many?
Listen.
How many? How many? How many times?
From
How many times?
behind, I have been called sir
From behind.
multiple times.
Nigga.
But let me tell
You must
I
be
was
wearing the
dressed.
wildest fucking
I am.
outfits to get that.
Listen.
I can relate. I look like a boy sometimes.
Listen, I get it, but people do look at me and they have like very ethnic-y features compared to other girls, and so they're like, "Oh, that's an interesting nose you have, Brittany. Tell me about the origin of that nose." And I'm like,
That doesn't mean they think you're a dude. Like, nah,
No,
you
but that's
capping
the question.
super hard.
I'm
That's the
I'm
question.
feeling the caps.
That's the follow-up. No, I swear to God, the number one insult I get is like, "This woman's obviously trans," right? Like, I'm like, "Oh my God!" Even in
No.
real life, no, swear to God, even, I swear. But that's the thing. That's why I'm so lenient on people, because I know like everyone looks different. So if you ask me, if you have feminine features, even if you're poor and you're just wearing like a nice wig, girl, I'm gonna call you a she, because like I know how hard it is for even cis women to be like not looked at questionably,
So-
not generally, just
So for
it
you,
happens.
so for you to pass, all they gotta do is wear a wig.
They don't even have to. Yeah, kind of. They have to wear the wig. I think. I want to say
That-
not even the wig. Here's the thing. Emotionally, I will accept you no matter what you look like. But from like if I'm just looking at you, it would be nicer if you came to women's spaces looking more sort of like a woman, whatever that means.
Okay,
Even if
I don't think most people would agree with that take. I don't think wearing a wig would make you pass for vast majority of people. I do not believe that most people see a male, and if they put on a wig, they're like, "Oh, that's clearly a trans woman." Like that's just not happening. They wouldn't pass that person as a cis woman. That's just not happening. So I'm actually curious, Destiny, in your take, what do you like? I asked the question earlier: is it ethical to price gate poor trans women out of women's spaces because they can't afford the necessary surgeries to pass, and therefore you don't feel like that's discrimination of some sort, or it's a bad thing?
It's discrimination, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. I mean, you can't compromise the safety and the feeling of safety of everybody there because some people can't afford to pass. I think it sucks, but I'm sorry, but
Okay. Oh yeah.
Well, with bathrooms, though, I mean, isn't your behavior the more important part? Like, as long as you're not standing
in the
up and
West,
pissing.
or I'm sorry, in the United States, we gender segregate our bathrooms really hard. If we were in like Sweden or something, maybe it'd be different, but
Okay, so we don't even have to do bathrooms. So let's take women's prisons. Is a wig enough to get you in a woman's prison?
Okay, I am way too progressive for this conversation, but not enough. But I will say this, like, I fully accept LGBT people. I've met a lot of non-passing trans people and who, listen, who feel very
Here come the
non-threatening to me.
disclaimers.
So
can we do
I'm-
this the rest of this conversation with just no disclaimers? Because it's
I
actually
know.
so
We
fucking
already know what you're
exhausting.
gonna. I
Oh my
love
God.
gay people. I love them.
Fine.
It just disgusts
Let
me.
me
Give
when
us
they
your
fuck
most
each other in the ass.
transphobic take, Brittany. Go ahead.
I'm telling it for you guys because, like, I can't imagine being afraid to be in a prison with a trans woman for any other, like, even a man, really, who wasn't threatening to me. But that's the thing, is the trans woman herself threatening to the women? Because aren't women afraid of other women in women's prisons? Just
Nowhere
like more
near
so
the
of
extent
the men.
that they would be of men,
I
yeah.
agree. But trans women tend to be, how do I say this nicely? Like, more feminine, literally, because they're women, like in a different way. So I'm less threatened by a trans woman than a man, absolutely.
ABBA's
So a
not
trans
getting
woman-
at ABBA's not getting at like Taft or counter or ContraPoints.
Yeah,
What
but even
ABBA
so,
is
like,
hinting
even
at,
a big,
ABBA is hinting
even a
at.
big, yeah, even a strong, independent trans woman who happens to be in prison with you.
What
absolutely.
the fuck is that description?
Well, I'm
a
trying-
strong,
Well,
independent.
you know what he's
I
trying
can
to
no,
say. I'm
no.
trying
I
not
just
to
want to
use
take
the
a
word. I'm
sidebar.
trying not to use the word.
A strong person of color,
Yeah, okay,
LGBT++.
Yeah, with fucking bulging muscles. Let's just keep it a stack, okay? Because I think this is one of the worst parts about libs in these kind of political conversations. Anything that's controversial, these motherfuckers have to give a million disclaimers before saying something so fucking milquetoast. Just say what you goddamn think. We don't need to know you love trans people, okay? Just say
I
it.
don't think it matters that they're trans in women's prisons. I think it matters of the individual, who the individual is, and how they're going to impact the other prisoners. I don't think it matters that they were male.
In the
I don't
UK,
think- yeah.
they have
Go
a
ahead, please.
trans wing for transgender people now, as much for their protection as for the protection of other people that they might have been put in the
Okay,
wrong
okay, but
place.
I want to go back to the original question. The question I was posing Destiny was essentially, should they get access to these spaces if they don't do enough to pass? And your answer is no.
Correct. They need a certain level of passing to get there. Yeah.
Okay.
But who is IDing people in these bathrooms?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, no.
Wait, what did you say? Hold on. Wait, what did you just say?
Who is standing outside these bathrooms and checking people's ID?
All of us do that. What do you mean? All of us check for people in the bathroom. We look
Nobody
at
does
somebody.
that.
Everybody looks at somebody.
Nobody is stopping anyone from
Everybody
going into
looks.
any
You
bathroom.
absolutely would. If a man walked into a bathroom, there'd be people shouting and screaming. What are you talking about? Everybody is doing this constantly.
They're not
Yeah, I
men,
definitely
are
do.
they?
I use men's bathrooms if the women's line is too long, and men usually don't have a problem with it.
I do too.
But here's
do
the
that
thing:
all the
if a
time.
man told me, "Hey, I know you're using the bathroom, but I'm actually super uncomfortable taking a shit next to a woman," I'd be like, "My bad, dude," and I'd leave.
Okay,
100%.
Forget the bathroom, because I think the bathroom is the dumbest example. I prefer choosing either the prison or the change room, because I think those are probably a little bit more of a vulnerable space. A bathroom, I think you can like skirt around, so I don't even like using that one. When I'm talking about women's spaces, and I'm just having this conversation in general, I think a lot of people give the lip service of like trans women are women, and they go up and they just keep repeating the slogan. But then you start posing them the more difficult question. It's like, can you revoke a trans person's right based off of how much they pass or what evil they've done? I just saw in Scotland they refused to allow trans women who've had sexual assaults on their record in women's prisons. But I'm like, does she stop being a woman because she's raped before? Or like, how does that function? I don't think that's the right thing.
Rapists?
That they do, but they don't allow trans women who've raped to go into there. Now, if you ask me personally, I think that is the correct thing because I don't really buy into this whole ideology. But if you do believe that trans women are women, how can you revoke their ability to have access to these prisons just because their criminal record is different than other trans women? That seems completely discriminatory, and I think it contradicts the idea. I think it contradicts the idea that you believe trans women are women. You believe trans women are women with asterisks. They have to have a perfect record. They have to have enough money to be able to pass perfectly. They have to reach a certain threshold in terms of societal standards of what a woman should look like. You don't actually believe trans women are women. You have a whole bunch of caveats around it.
Why don't we
Were
just have
they-
sexual predators in another jail or sexual offenders?
I was going to say,
Okay.
were they put into a men's prison or were they put into
They were
solitary,
put
or
in
were
men's
they
prison.
put in-
They're being put in a
That's
women's
weird
prison.
because in the UK we do have a transgender wing now, but maybe
Yeah.
this was prior to
What, in
that?
every
I
place
don't
in the
know when this
UK?
was.
Like in every place, you guys have a wing, or do they all?
Wait, in the
Oh,
UK or in England?
It's in England, but Scotland is part of the UK, as is England.
Does
But it's- where's
wait,
the prison?
hold on. Does Scotland send its prisoners to England? Do you guys do that? Do they just
Yeah.
go anywhere? Is it all over the country? Or
In this kind of mitigating circumstance, it
But
could be.
I don't think it matters. I don't even think it matters. You can make trans wings. You're still discriminating against them. You're telling them they don't have access to the women's spaces, which means you don't feel that they are women. If you're saying trans women are women, but go to this other bathroom because you're trans, you don't see them as women.
Well, so the reason the trans wing works is because if they are still potentially a danger to women, i.e., they haven't had the surgery, etc., they are still potentially a danger to them. But they're also a danger, like they may get hurt by the men. Therefore, they can't be put with the men, but they also can't be put with the women. So this was what was put forth as a compromise. I don't know if this is still the same if the transgender woman has gone through complete transitioning, but this is for pre-transition.
Okay, but I still want to go back to the original point, which is like they don't feel like they're women, which I think is what really matters here. Whether they create a trans wing or whatever it is, at the end of the day, they're segregating them. You can say it's for their safety, you can say it's for this, you can say for whatever, but the reason you're really not giving them the space is because you feel like they're drastically different than cis women. And so therefore they should have no space.
Thinks trans women are cis women. Nobody thinks that.
well, that's
Right.
what I was getting at. Is some people do that slogan of like trans women are women, and it's like that's
Yeah,
kind
but
of
trans
dumb.
women are women doesn't mean trans women are cis women.
Okay.
So do you think trans women would be accepting of the fact that you can take the sports example. Trans women don't want to compete against trans women. They want to compete against cis women. The reason why is because people feel trans women are women. So I don't want to get into minute details of like, well, they're different by biology. What I'm trying to get at is that these spaces are important to trans women because they want to be in the spaces as the gender they express as. I don't understand how you can discriminate them against these spaces and also believe that trans women are women.
I agree with that.
Because trans women are women doesn't mean trans women are cis women. They don't mean
So
the
you,
same thing.
I agree. So then bathrooms should be only for the cis women since that's what it's originally for.
For what reason?
Because Because
We
trans
should just
women
make
aren't
all
cis women.
bathrooms
No,
fucking
because
gender
trans women
neutral.
aren't
There's
cis
no
women.
reason for them to be gendered at this point anyway.
What?
They're just fucking toilets. They don't need a gender. It's stupid as it is.
Do you think the same thing about? Do you think about change? Do you feel the same thing about change rooms? Do you think men and women should just be changing the same room?
I don't get naked in front of random people at all. I think
That's
that,
not. I just want you to engage with the question. I don't want to. What your weird proclivities are. I don't really care.
Yeah, but
I'm asking you. I'm asking you in general. Should change rooms be co-ed? All of them.
No, but like there should be the option for people to have private changing rooms, so it doesn't matter what.
Okay, but that's not possible. That's too expensive to do in every space. So let's hold up.
Where?
We're doing this
Literally
stupid thing.
everywhere in England. I've
All right,
never
Destiny,
got
can you
changed in
engage with the
front of
question?
people.
Destiny, can you
Whatever.
engage with the question? Because this is a waste of my time. So I want to get to the point of it.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with anything you're saying, so I don't know why you want me to engage.
Okay, all right. Well, then in that case, I guess you just have a tremendous transphobic point of view.
Yeah, that's why people call me transphobic. I'm like a transmedicalist.
Okay. All right. Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude, but I just think it's kind of silly when I'm trying to get to like.
This is Kelly. This is what she does. Okay.
Yeah, to me it's like I just think it's dumb. Like we're trying to have a general conversation for most society. If you just come in and be like, "Well, I'm very comfortable with my sexuality, so I can get naked in front of everybody," it's like I'm not talking about you specifically. I just think on a macro scale, there are certain things that we expect for society to function, and it just doesn't seem logical to have this whole slogan of trans women are women. They want access to these spaces, but we're not going to give them access to these spaces because trans women should be segregated. They should be kept safe. Like that, just you can't have those two things coincide. So I think that's what I wanted to talk about. Not necessarily like, oh well, let's just change all bathrooms and let's change all change rooms and let's create a trans wing. Like that's not a feasible solution. Like people say, let's create a trans bathroom.
I've been to multiple gyms and etc. etc. I've never had to like change in front of other people and swimming pools and stuff. That the way they're already set up in the UK, people just don't like getting naked in front of random people.
Hold on, wait a second.
Maybe it's
Gym
different in the
changing
US,
rooms in
I don't
the UK are all just one giant room? Or I'm sorry, are you all
they're
get
not.
separate rooms for everything? Is that true?
There are always some separate rooms in every gym and every swimming pool that I've ever been to. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I've never been in a gym like that in the United States, unless the women's ones are different, I guess.
I know. So like in England, especially all the swimming pools, they have like the group changing rooms as well for kids and stuff too. So I don't know, but like it's yeah. I don't know. Maybe we're just prudish, so we don't like being naked in front of anyone. That is entirely possible. I don't know.
Destiny, what do you think the question I raised in terms of ethics and like how to deal with the whole trans topic? What do you think this means for the general discourse? Because generally, I don't think people. I think the question I raised I think is a tough one to answer. So, what do you think the mainstream view of the whole trans issue, like from the left, would? How do you think they would react to the question I raised?
Probably horribly.
Which is?
It's just a bunch of people screaming slogans at each other and being retarded. Like that's where the conversation is.
Ask me. I'm more progressive than Steven. Ask me.
Well, but you're
Okay,
sharing opinions with both of us, I think, it sounds like. So, like, most people are going to either scream at you trans women or women, or they're going to scream trans women are trying to rape little girls in the bathroom. Like, that's where the conversation is publicly. It's completely retarded.
I don't even think men are trying to rape women in bathrooms. I think yeah, go ahead.
I'm actually curious. Do you think that these people, if they found out the trans woman was a sex offender who had raped two women and they were going to jail for that, if they found out that trans woman was not going to be put into women's prison, do you think they would fight that or they'd accept it? And the reason why I ask is that if they accept that trans women should not be in a prison with cis women, they're essentially saying that there's a strong distinction between trans women and cis women, and that trans women aren't actually women and shouldn't have access to women's spaces. Am I wrong?
Can you say it again, Abba, for me?
I couldn't follow that, to be clear, yeah.
Sorry, if you believe trans women are women, okay, and then you come to find out that a trans woman who had raped two people was going to jail, but was not going to be put in the women's prison because of those rapes, and you accept that, then I think you don't actually believe that trans women are women.
I agree with that. I don't think people do think trans people are trans. Like, I think people are trans. Like, I don't think people actually think trans women are women.
Careful.
Except trans women and people who... Because, like, the thing is, you can't erase the male and female part. So what they believe is spiritually, personally, they are women. I believe they're women. But I believe they're women, which is different.
Really
right?
weird. The conversation online has shifted a little bit more extreme to where there are people that push for like actually trans women are biological women.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, those people deserve to exist in their little bubble in the universe, right? But here. Oh, guys, I can generalize with you right now. Generally speaking, on a mass scale, I personally wish we could get to the point where like gender isn't the issue. It's more like offensive violence and the potential for that, because there are men who I think would agree they'd rather be put in a women's prison and they're not going to be violent towards those women. So I think we're all just afraid to admit that like we're afraid of violence no matter the gender.
There's
yeah,
no
but the
way.
issue is that like
There's no
98%. Well, what do you mean? Of course that's true. What she just said. I'd rather be put in a women's prison.
Yeah, I bet you would.
Yeah, what do you mean? Yeah, but the problem is that violence is very gendered, right? Like
Yeah, but okay, well, men, don't you about to say violence is gendered and men are violent, then men get mad when women are afraid of men?
I'm not mad when women are afraid of men. I think that's
Well, I know
perfectly
you're
valid.
progressive.
Neither am I. I just don't think just because you're afraid that entitles you to do and say anything you want.
Sure, of course
Well,
not.
that's the dilemma, right? People feel that way about trans women. They're like, well, you're a man, so you're going to hurt women. And then women go, well, you're a man, you're going to hurt women. But we're all butthurt about it.
Whoa. They're not men. They're trans women.
Well,
They're
let's
women.
Well, you know
wait, real quick. Okay, you mentioned earlier that you had a safe space for therapy, right?
It was a women's group, but not for therapy. It was just a support group.
Okay,
for
but
people who
regardless,
wanted to go.
right?
Yeah.
In your mind, what is like the purpose of a safe space?
To give people a space to feel safe and where they could talk about things that people came to talk about. So, like, maybe in this case, it would be like my assault or stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think the purpose of a safe space is that, like, you're in that space with people that have a similar subset of things that they're dealing with, and then you don't have to worry about, like, caveating or keeping something in mind because you don't have to worry about appealing to somebody that doesn't belong in that space. That's, like, the point of a safe space. I think that the issue is when we talk about like bathrooms and locker rooms and stuff like that, for a lot of women, to some extent, these are safe spaces. Like the way that women act when there are men present is going to be a little bit different than the way women might act when there are no men present. And even if it's subtle, and even if there's not much that you, like, it's not like the average man is like a rapist or a murderer or whatever, but like you're going to be a little bit more on guard and a little bit different in those spaces where men are present. So I think that's why people push for having some of these spaces separately. Like even if most men aren't murderers or rapists, sometimes you just don't want to be around men because
I will tell you, my mother will never be convinced to go to the bathroom with a man. She will never think that's reasonable.
Can
but
you stop
me,
saying a man? Just say
sorry.
trans woman.
No. I meant a cis man.
Okay.
I meant a cis man. But me, I have been to a lot of queer clubs, and the bathrooms are usually non-gendered. So I've gone to the bathroom with men like a billion times in my life. I don't even know how many. So when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, this is a safe space. But I would never let my mother go to those spaces because it would trigger her. Because like she doesn't understand the energy of the room. So I think that plays so much heavier into these things than we want to admit, that some of us, like all my gay guy friends, would definitely rather be in the women's prisons. Like they don't be with men, and let's say they're not sexual predators, right? It's like, yes, I, Brittany, would rather be with all genders in one space that aren't going to be violently raping each other. That's the space I want to be in. Which prison has that?
probably
space has that?
the women one.
But women rape women. Like that's the thing. It's not like women aren't raping women and
Okay, if I were to
like,
look up the numbers, do you think that it would be about equivalent in terms of like sexual assault stuff in women's prisons versus women versus
men's prisons?
I
don't know.
I don't know how true that is, but I've actually heard that like lesbian relationships are fraught with like abuse and.
Oh,
But I know that carries over to
Not
sexual.
equal to-
I don't believe that would carry over to sexual violence, but yeah. So
Yeah,
I would
in a
I would
prison, you're going to
probably
be having a much higher density of actual violent people.
That's
True.
the problem, right? And then rape is used often as a power play. So like the problem is, do lesbians rape for power in prison as much as men rape for power in prison?
yeah.
I don't know. Do
My
people
guess is
think
going to
women's
be that
prisons are
my,
sewing circles?
my guess is going to be in general, women's prisons are probably less violent than men's prisons. That's my guess. I could be wrong. It's probably a Google search away if someone wants to look it up. But
Yeah, I'd probably agree with this.
I mean, I've seen Orange is the New Black, so there's a lot of violence. But yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, actually. Probably less, I would assume so. But women are less prone to violence because we're like, honestly, we're like, let's just like not. And our egos aren't associated with it.
The reason why I brought all this stuff is because Destiny, at least his framework makes more sense to me because I think it's actually pragmatic and can work on a like macro scale to some degree. It would require some amount of discrimination because like the barometer by which you would decide whether or not somebody passes would be somewhat not. It would be subjective. You would agree, Destiny? Like,
yeah, a little
not
bit, of
entire-
course.
Yeah. Okay. And I think it would also discriminate because some men or some males already born with more feminine features are going to have a lot easier time passing than others, and so the amount of surgery investment required would be drastically different. And so knowing all these things, what you describe as a framework is so drastically different than what I hear in the mainstream, which is like the moment you say you are, and so there's no one who can question you. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense, because then if you have no barometer, then you'd basically be accepting anybody who says they are as a trans woman. But I also have seen that when there's been a few cases of like trans women who've raped people in the bathrooms or done some sexual assault, in this very minority cases, people have discredited their transness immediately because they're like, well, no, they're not a trans woman, they're a sex offender, or they're not trans. These are just people using advantage. Like, you shouldn't judge all trans people by that. But I'm like, how do you just take away their transness the moment they do something evil? I just don't understand that.
Usually,
it feels like
this isn't the case for people that were clearly trans prior to them doing
what does that mean, though?
whatever crime was. Well, there are people that start to transition as they've already been charged with the crime, and that's usually why this topic of conversation gets brought up. It's not people that were already trans for several years prior to, being violent or whatever it is they did.
Okay.
So, I'm actually curious. When you say transition, you don't mean surgery. You just mean like they've identified with a new name and they've started publicly appearing as the other.
Yeah, so there's only really been a few cases, but each time, at least the ones that had the most publicity to them, they started to say that they were trans through the middle of the court case, right? So it was quite a while after they committed the crime.
Mm-hmm.
That's why.
Okay.
So people start to doubt what their intentions were because of it, and that may or may not be fair. I don't know. But that's why.
Okay, guys.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go. No, go. I'm reading NPR to give us, or PBS to give us.
I'm actually curious. So basically, we're judging how valid it is based off of when they started transitioning or appearing in public transitioning, correct?
Yeah, well, we don't know what people's intentions are, do we? So there could have been no bad intention there at all, but also they could be trying to get sent to a less aggressive prison where they have an advantage socially, I guess.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, you want to say something about NPR?
Okay, this is 2018, so this is a little outdated. This is kind of crazy. They're saying there's 2 million Americans in jail, and they're like more than 200,000 of them are female. And I'm like, wait, that few of women are the ones, that many of men are in prison? What is going on?
America has the highest prison population in the world. Yeah,
for sure. But I didn't know a majority of them were actually that many men over women. That's 200,000 women. That's it. That's insane compared to all those men.
Men commit men commit like 98% of violent crimes. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, in this, they're saying prison is harder for women because of like reproductive stuff and periods, which is not what I'm talking. I want to know violence statistics, people. So obviously, just in numbers alone, I'm gonna say that it sounds like men definitely just have a rougher time of prison. And
but it's not a numbers; it's a per capita thing, right? Because it's not like 2 million men are in one prison. Yeah.
No, you're right.
So if out of those 200,000, 100,000 of them are being extremely violent and raping in jail,
right.
That would probably be higher than the male population.
Yeah, you're right.
By the stats that I looked at, it looked like they were more likely to be raped by male staff. Like the women that are in prison. So
in which prisons?
The women are more likely to be raped by staff.
Yeah, they have a.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I thought you were trying to say like the men are more likely to be raped by staff. I'm like, no shot. I don't believe that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But the women, I didn't believe that for a second, but I believe it for the women.
Incarcerated women are 30 times more likely to be raped than free women, even though women account for less than 10%.
Yeah, okay, this is gonna sound. This is gonna sound super fucked up.
I can link you.
This is gonna sound super fucked up, but the staff are men. These are all women in prison. How many of them know they're not gonna get out for some long time and just want some dick? Now, technically, you can't consent because you're a prisoner. But I am very confident that there's a bunch of these women who probably want to fuck these dudes to get favors out of them or just get some dick because they're going to be there for a long time. They probably miss that shit. But technically, a prisoner can't consent, so it's very unethical and pretty up.
I can't believe you'd even say that. Jesus.
That's facts.
I need to find the initial source for this because.
Well, I just want to know what country. Like, are we doing a global?
Oh.
Yeah, because I think that matters.
I think it was America, but let me.
Oh, okay.
Because
I don't want to also assume.
Imagine being a prison guard and the female prisoner's like, bro, I'll suck your for a cigarette. I'm like, God, is she fired too?
Jesus Christ. You're one step away from saying, imagine being a teacher at a poor community college, and she's like, I'll suck your for an A, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, but you
That's
know what
where
the
you're
problem
at.
is? Nobody feels any sympathy for criminals.
True. Dehumanize them. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it, man. Once you find out she murdered 3 people, it's like, yeah, suck that dick for that cigarette.
Jesus
You guys are some
Christ.
foul shit.
What the fuck?
I think you can. People make rape jokes about prisoners all the time, and nobody cares. I think it's only once you get out of jail that those jokes matter.
True.
How do you guys feel about using rape as a revenge tactic against somebody who raped you?
Jesus fucking Christ.
Whoa, what the fuck? Okay, Zerka.
I was just saying, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, we like, it's weird how we think about violence and sex and like trading favors, and I just like, I don't know, my brain went there. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were from Iraq, not from fucking Iran. Jesus.
You mean like hire someone to rape them?
So
Well,
like
yeah, I
you
was
want to
thinking
rape
about,
your
like-
rapist?
I was thinking about how everyone, like, at least in my bubbles, like, glorify, like, yeah, I was thinking about the girl with the dragon tattoo. That's like how she gets her revenge, and it's like really satisfying to watch. 'Cause you're like,
Jesus
yeah, fuck that guy.
Christ.
For sure. And all he, like, it was pretty satisfying, but at the same time, like, is that justifiable? It's justifiable to kill your rapist, right? Like, people kill their rapists in self-defense. Like, a lot of people don't even understand how
That's
it
not. Yeah, self-defense is not the same as
Right,
if you
right,
went
right, for
murdered
sure.
your rapist. Ethically
Well,
speaking,
did you hear-
I would say it's wrong. Would I feel bad for the rapist? Absolutely not. But if you ask me if it's correct, no, I would say it's
that one. I
doesn't.
want to know if we feel bad. Do we feel bad when
If
we
your
cause-
rapist gets raped, no.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would feel bad if your rapist got raped.
There's a big element of self-defense that fundamentally changes how we deal with like scenarios where we're punishing people. So for instance, if you're like, could you murder somebody that could you murder somebody that like like tried to kill your family or whatever? People would say yes, but if you were to ask like, could I rape them or could I torture them? I don't think people would be okay with that.
Yeah. See,
Yeah,
we
I'm
like a
dying.
swift death.
Wow.
We
I'm
like a
dying.
swift. That's what I'm saying. We would rather die. We'd rather kill.
Wait, what did I
than,
miss?
Like cause like rape people.
Because
Go ahead,
Rick
Abba.
brings up like, yeah, you know, like how crazy it is when people they murder folks in self-defense. I'm like, what are you gonna rape in self-defense? Like, how do you?
Just saying.
Well, there are some countries. I think in Iran they actually do that. Don't they do the eye for an eye shit there?
No, that's not raping in self-defense. And what scenario? Someone penetrated, you're like, fuck off, get off me. Now it's my turn.
Well,
Like,
hold
that's
on.
just
Listen,
not-
Abba. In a world where people can be forced to eat somebody's ass,
Yeah.
anything's
yeah, good
possible.
point.
Okay.
Abba's just lost it. He's gone.
So wait, you guys think it's okay to like you get raped and then you go kill your rapist?
I would say I'd give that one a big no. Oh wait. Oh, go kill your rapist.
Like hunt them down.
That's a hard one.
No, like they rape you.
retaliation as opposed to
Yeah,
defense.
and then you just kill them.
I think that's
What
one of
do you
those
mean by-
things. It's hard to say, but I think socially speaking, there are some things that like I would understand. I don't think you should do them, but I'd understand it. I don't know if I'd punish for it. Like the one I always think of is that like if somebody like rapes or like tortures or does some like bad shit to your kid and like the parent like hunts them down and kills them, like you shouldn't do that. It's not good. But like, damn, am I really gonna like come at somebody for doing that? I don't know.
And there's a lot of
there was,
reasons.
Understandable.
like there was that father.
Yeah, in the
who,
Texas
Yeah.
courthouse,
beat
they
the
stood outside.
pedophile to near death.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, the reason
Yeah.
why he was wrong, okay, even though like yes, we can all say go beat the guy who touched your kid. The problem is when people take on justice for themselves, oftentimes it's messy and it puts a lot of other people at risk. And that guy, if I remember correctly, when he went after the pedophile's father was also in the car, and it put his life in jeopardy as well. So the moment we start to allow for that on a societal level, we risk complete anarchy and a lot of innocent people being hurt as a result of people taking justice to their own hands.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's wrong on an ethical level. But if you ask me, I think most people agree. They would never feel bad if a pedophile was murdered by the parent of the person they abused. Like nobody would feel bad in that situation. But it doesn't mean it can make it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to be 100%, right? Because the worry is like, what if a girl says, oh yeah, he raped me, and then he didn't, and that's why we have to have like a system and a law and everything, because that
Yeah.
shit happens.
True.
God,
I
I,
have a
must have
rape
jumped in
question.
like right when you guys moved on from the trans woman in prison.
You can bring it back. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Wait, who is talking? Why does it say 6 people are here? Are there more than 6 people?
There's 7.
Oh my
7.
god.
I have a rape question real fast
Whoa,
now
whoa.
that we're on this topic.
Go for it.
Do you guys think that it's more traumatic for a victim who was raped to have enjoyed it and let's say orgasmed than a victim who had a horrible time. I mean, they both in both situations they have horrible time. But I'm just saying, like, if they
I think it's worse for the person who orgasmed. That would fucking
Yeah,
I
we're
haunt
would-
me.
gonna feel
I would
guilty.
That would make
agree.
me feel like shit. That would make me feel
Yeah.
1,000 times worse.
Abba, why are you laughing?
Because
This
these
is the
are
way you
crazy
said it.
questions.
This is the way
No,
you
I
said
know,
it. Do you
but-
think it's worse for the person who had an orgasm, or do you think the one who
bilingual,
didn't
so-
enjoy it?
Well, you
Okay.
feel like super guilty and kind of beat yourself up over that kind of thing, right? For a long
mean,
time. It
like
really
100
carries
times
with
more.
you.
I think
Yeah, but I
both are
mean, when
bad,
you orgasm,
just
there's
differently.
a physical, there's physical pleasure, right?
Well,
That
your
you
body's
can't-
having an experience that your mind could not be having.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
that's why I mean, like, that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, women have reported that happening. I think, yeah, that would feel worse. But I,
Trauma tier list.
yeah.
Yeah, I
it
feel
goes.
like it would be much worse.
But it isn't worse, and if you're hearing this, you're valid and I love you.
True.
You know, what'd be so fucked up. You know how so many women report never having orgasm. Like,
Yeah.
imagine if,
Oh
like, the
my
first
God.
time. That's really fucked up. I think that's S tier. The first
Jesus.
time you ever orgasm is through that, like
S
that
tier.
will that'll just in terms of trauma. You know?
Fucking
That would be
S
so
tier.
sad.
Okay,
That would be so sad.
agreed. So wait, Zonia, is that the name?
Hello.
Yes. So what did you want to talk about in regards to that topic?
Well, you seem like you've moved pretty far on from it, so I wasn't sure where you were. I kind of caught some of it, then I had to go and do something, then I come back, jump
Okay, well,
on, and you guys.
yeah.
have
If you
moved on.
do you want to talk about the portion you did here? And then we can-
Yeah, so you're talking about like how to decide whether or not like where someone should go in terms of the prison. And so there was like somebody brought up saying, well, like in this case, I think it was Kelly, like in this case the person was transitioning after they had committed their crime that brought them into prison. And then you guys started talking about, well, what are what is like the instances of violence among prison inmates, masculine or male to female. So that was about the time where I jumped out. So I was
Okay.
like, from my
I'll just-
perspective.
Can I just
from my
summarize what the
perspective-
disagreement was about, and then you can just
Sure,
let me know
yeah,
what you
that'd
think?
be great.
Yeah, that'd probably just be easier. So my issue is that essentially we operate under the framework that trans women are women. The moment they say they are, they are. And so basically what happened is I gave the example of the trans woman who have been accused, who's currently under trial for multiple violent sexual assaults against women. And they were being denied access to women's prison as a result of their sexual potential sexual conviction. They didn't want that inmate in there with other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question was, how can you say that trans women are women if the moment that they do something criminal, you revoke their access to normal women's spaces that you wouldn't to other cis women? Meaning, like, if a cis woman had raped two people, she wouldn't be barred from going to a prison with other cis women. But because it's a trans woman, all of a sudden her womanhood is denied. And so how is that ethical? And so, yeah, that was the question I was posing.
Yeah, okay, that's actually a really good question. And yeah, like philosophically, it's kind of inconsistent, right? Because we're sitting there, we're saying, well, you know, you're a woman, but there are these qualifiers that make us no longer see you as a woman, at least the way we treat you. Yeah, so I think the way that I kind of view that thing is you have to, when it comes to ethics, there are some things where you have to yield to, okay, this may not be as socially ethical, but when it comes to the protection of the people that we care for, we have to draw a line there and say, well, we are going to have to treat you differently. I think some ways in which that can be managed is by some form of like administrative segregation inside of the prison. And that still is pretty shitty to do, because administrative segregation is unfortunately kind of, it's not very healthy, because you're separating them from the general population and isolating them. But they will also be safer because but you would you could do administrative segregation in like either one of the prisons, male or female. It's cruel either way. What I think probably would be the better approach to give them like transition time is to move them to the women's prison, but to administratively segregate them there, and over time, as they go through, you know, maybe a gradual period of combination of socialization and maybe even medical transition, it can be decided by like the warden or whatever they have for this, you know, board of, you know, ethics board or something that makes these decisions, can decide whether or not to better integrate them or integrate them on a trial basis with the general population of the prison.
Yeah, see, I would disagree with that, and the reason why is because you wouldn't do that to cis women who are convicted of the same crimes. And so what it indicates to me is that while it's a very pragmatic approach, and I don't disagree, what it flies in the face of is the idea that trans women are women. Because here you have both a trans woman who's committed multiple rapes, and then a cis woman who's committed multiple rapes, yet you only segregate the trans woman for her sex crimes. To me, that indicates that the difference between the two is not the offense or anything like that, but the fact that the trans woman shouldn't have space because she's trans. Access to the space because she's trans, sorry.
But sometimes you kind of have to do that sort of thing to keep other people safe. Like I take it from my perspective. This is the way that I would kind of view it, and this is obviously purely an anecdotal kind of demonstration. But so I'm a trans woman, and I transitioned as an adult. So I had already fully developed masculinity by the time that I had transitioned, but I've been on HRT for a very long time, and so I would be worried, honestly, if like another trans woman who had sexually assaulted multiple women and then transitioned after being convicted, I would be worried because that person went into the system as a violent sex offender who is, has all their testosterone and everything, and they're just transitioning, and they would be a danger for me because they could easily overpower me or potentially easily overpower me. Right?
Would you feel different if they hadn't transitioned recently? What if they'd pretty much gone most of their life most of their adult life as a trans woman?
That would balance things out a lot more. Then I would feel a little bit safer, because a guy like a fully grown man, even a teen boy who's like late in puberty, could really do some damage to me if I'm not prepared.
Yeah, just ask Cat Williams. I'm sorry.
So it's something I would be concerned about. And then if they have a violent track record, and particularly for taking advantage of vulnerable people and violently assaulting them and sexually assaulting them, yeah, there's a lot for me to be worried about there.
Okay, so this is interesting. So I guess based off your framework, you acknowledge that trans women are women, but if they have a violent past, there's certain women's spaces that they shouldn't have access to, based off if they're trans women.
If there's demonstrated track record, right? So in the case of law, and they've been tried and convicted, right? So I wouldn't want to go based on just like superstition, or whatever, or people's biases about women who have recently transitioned, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that there's any inconsistency there. If you believe that trans women are women, but you don't believe that trans women are like cis women, obviously, you can still think that trans women are women without acknowledging that they're not the same as cis women.
I agree. What becomes the issue is that you start... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And I can recognize that I know the difference, like going from being a fully developed male and transitioning, going through HRT, a lot of changes happen for me that are very noticeable. It's much harder for me to keep on muscle mass. I lost a lot of it, and I also lost a bit of my more aggressive edge over time. So, those are things that were very distinct changes in me that I noticed, and so it's a big difference. So when you have somebody who is recently transitioned, who has a pattern of hurting people and taking advantage of vulnerable people, yeah, it's something to definitely be a little worried about when they're in the presence of a bunch of people who are not as likely to have those traits and are certainly not as likely to have the physical capacity stacked up against them, or at least to balance it out, right?
Do you guys think any of us would survive prison?
I would not.
My chat says we would never survive.
Like I would be okay.
Sorry, but I cut off Abatha when he was in the middle of saying something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I like sleeping with women, so I could manage. I would just find like whoever is the strongest, baddest bitch in there, and then just be
her bottom bitch, be her queen bottom bitch. What?
Oh, it would be fine.
Somebody's been watching Orange is the New Black.
True.
So I think what's interesting here is that based off the violent nature of the individual in question, I think what ends up happening is that a portion of their transness gets kind of denied, or their idea or their access to women's spaces gets denied based off of their behavior. And I think what that implies is that there's a certain level of danger and added danger to trans women that cis women don't have. Sorry.
I think this is pretty easy to deconflict. Actually, it seems like the conflict that you're trying to address is the fact that if you ever have to make any distinction between trans women and cis women and separate them physically based on physiological differences, then you're not recognizing trans women as women or something like that. Is that correct?
Pretty close to that, yeah.
Do you want to clarify what I'm missing?
I don't think it's just you're not just seeing them as women. I think it also, actually, you know what? I think I'll start there, and if I find any objections afterwards, I'll let you know.
Okay. It seems like this might be one case where the distinction between like female and women has some use, where women is like the cultural whatever performance of femaleness or something like that, or that comes out of femaleness, and that trans women typically we expect like transitioning to be a thing that is meant to sort of be effective in treating like gender dysphoria, which is like a sexual feeling like you're born in the wrong body or whatever. There's like some mismatch between what your sex is and what sex you feel like or something like that, and then like doing the cultural performance of a woman like helps ameliorate that or something, right? In the case of prisons, like I'm curious, Kelly Jean, you seem really reticent to recognize that there should be any sort of separation between sexes with prison. I feel like when it comes to prison,
No, I wasn't.
Okay, well,
What are you
earlier
talking
when you were asked if somebody who was like big and burly and brawny like a male, but identified as a woman, were to enter a woman's prison, you didn't seem to have any problem with that.
No, I did.
I think
said
she was
we
talking about
literally-
bathrooms.
Maybe it was to talk about bathrooms, sure, but not about prisons, no.
Okay, so right,
Although
so
I
we
don't
had
even think I said that about bathrooms, but I don't think anyone said
you
that.
did.
In fact, I'm not. No, I didn't. I said we have a transgender wing in the UK,
Okay,
Okay,
you talked whatever. The
and
point
that I
is,
don't think that men should be in women's prisons or.
well, but they're not. They're
men,
identifying as women,
sorry.
right?
What I mean is men that have not transitioned, they still have a penis.
But
Oh.
so
Women's
to you,
prisons.
they're only a trans woman if they have bottom surgery.
No, they're a danger to women. It doesn't matter if they're a trans woman.
Based on
but
what,
they're a
though?
danger.
Well, wait. When trans
Because
women
they have
take
a
medication,
penis.
doesn't it cause their penis to become basically like not functional?
There was a trans woman who raped women after being put in with the women. Although she was put in like what is the word? Confinement, solitary confinement, but still somehow managed to rape other women.
Administrative
Do we think that
segregation
this one's-
is what
wait,
it
do we
was.
think
Yeah,
this-
yeah, I think that's fine.
Do you think this one trans woman or trans women are matching the numbers of the women already getting raped as it is? Like, how much more are they adding to the numbers?
Well, I mean, I don't know for UK stats. I hope that they're
That's
not
a
as
really
bad
good
as
question because like
really dystopian American statistics.
you would expect at least one trans woman to rape somebody, right? Because people rape in
Sure.
prison, right? So
Yeah.
is just one, is that cause for concern? It would depend. Yeah, you'd have to break down the numbers, but that is true.
We can't stop all rape, but we can at least put in some safeguards. But also, we don't want trans women being, murdered by men either. So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, well, I mean, we are highly likely to be raped in men's prisons. Like that's pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah, yeah.
inevitable.
that's why we
And-
have a trans wing, because we're better.
Do trans wings have rape?
Oh, probably. But we're doing our best. Right?
Would somebody be up to dragging in a colleague of mine?
Oh, God.
Real quick, I just wanted to address the ABBA thing real quick because I feel like it's really pretty easy to disentangle this by just saying like, with things like sports and prisons and stuff, we don't have that separation because of like the cultural differences or whatever social performances between men and women. It's because of the physiological differences, right? And even if somebody's on HRT or something like that, or somebody is taking hormones to try to like sexually transition to the other side, there's still going to be some separation. So it's not so much, you can still recognize that somebody is like a woman but has, still largely male physiology or something, right?
So
feel like I've said that so
I
many
don't think
times.
that works, and the reason why I don't think that works is because that physiological difference is what I think makes a lot of females feel generally unsafe around males in general. So if you were saying trans women still carry that difference, then that would apply to any space where women might feel any kind of vulnerability. It could apply to bathrooms, it could apply to change rooms. So your idea,
That's
whilst
true.
I don't. it applies to every space that women
not
traditionally.
every space, but
Well,
some
most
selective
spaces.
Not even most spaces, but
Well,
some selective spaces.
Hold up. The reason why we have
Spaces
women's
where
spaces.
women would be going exclusively. The whole reason why there is a separation.
Exactly.
Based on the physiological difference. So like trans women or women, I think can apply to like. I think nobody would question that this should apply for calling somebody ma'am at the grocery store, or whatever, like the woman, the trans woman that the GameStop that had like the viral meltdown or whatever. Like it shouldn't be difficult. We should all just affirm that you should call somebody who's like presenting as a woman, even if they have still largely male physiology.
But that's not a woman's space. A grocery store is not a woman's space. I'm talking about traditional women's spaces. And the reason why most women's spaces exist is in order to feel safe from males. Have a space where they don't have to worry about that influence. And so there is no
space. The reason this is
space.
a problem is because there's a word game happening here where like most people haven't like they don't want to adopt or whatever. That like most people will just assume that women, the definition of woman is vagina haver, right?
Yes.
Like, people don't distinguish between female and women or whatever, the cultural and physiological difference between between women and female.
By the way, FK is in off topic. If you would.
Do we only need the 12th person in here right now? Is that...
well,
I can leave. I just wanted to just address that real quick. Well, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Abba, anyway. It seems like there's a little bit of word games happening with this.
I don't think there's a word game. As I understand it, the whole gender expression versus biology thing is something that some people believe in, and I think they make a stark difference for them, and that's fine. I have no issue with that. But I just think it's interesting that they acknowledge that. But the moment biology is brought up, then they start justifying the reasons why they would segregate trans women based off of female and sex. So it's like trans women are women, but they shouldn't have access to women's spaces because they're male. It's essentially what they're saying. So then they prioritize their sex over their gender in almost every woman's spaces. So if you're doing that, there is no time where you could say it's okay for trans women to be in women's spaces because they're always going to be male, and therefore that difference in physiology always exists.
Well, no, I mean that's as simple as just saying trans women are women, but trans women aren't necessarily female.
I've said this about 8 times. You said it now. I'm sure they'll listen.
Destiny. Are you understanding what I'm saying, or like maybe?
I understand what you're saying, but he's saying that he's recognizing a distinction between sex and gender, but you're playing the like trans women are women card with no distinction. That's the difference right now.
Right.
He's saying that sex and gender are different, and he's saying... Yeah.
The reason why I'm doing that is because the way society operates and the way that the trans discourse happens is because they're trying to eliminate that distinction as much
I
as
understand,
possible.
and I agree with you, and that's what I said. I said on Twitter, that's why I said that to Brittany earlier. It's like, well, some people are trying to say trans women are biologically women. There are people that say that, right?
Yes, so I think that's what I'm really arguing against.
Yeah,
if
but
you're just
nobody
saying
in
there's
here...
a difference, I would agree.
Yeah, no one in here has that position, so it's hard because nobody's truly representing that side of the argument.
Actually, they do. They are kind of playing the line.
No one in here in this call, I think.
No, in this call, because some folks are saying no, trans women should have access to women's spaces, but then they say caveat when there's a threat or when their biology might be in effect, then they don't have.
They're saying trans women should have access to women's spaces when we're accounting for gender. Right? But trans women probably shouldn't have access to women's spaces when, like, the sex is the really crucial difference.
So wait, hold on. I just want to say something, just to make sure I understand.
Sure.
As I understand it, the reason why folks didn't want women having access to the prisons is because there's a difference in biology, and so therefore it's a physical thing. It's about their sex, correct?
Okay.
Wait.
This is super clear. This is super easy, okay? Sex and gender are two different things, okay? But most people say, right now they argue this, say sex and gender are two different things, okay? So women, in the gender sense, should have access to women's spaces when it doesn't matter that much in terms of what the sex is. But in sexual spaces where the sex matters, then that should be reserved for people of the female sex, which would exclude trans women. That's the argument that's being given.
Right.
So you can't say, but you're trying to say that, like, well, aren't you excluding their womenness in some points if you exclude them from those spaces? The counter argument is no, you're not, because they don't have the sex there. For instance, going to a gynecologist is reserved for people of the female sex, not for women. And to say that, well, if you're going to go to the doctor, you can't go to a gynecologist because you're not a woman, that's not excluding their transness. That's just recognizing the sex-gender distinction and saying you can't go there because you're not a biologically sex female, you're a trans woman. It's a different thing. That's the difference.
It's kind of like
prisons aren't women's prisons because the people
like
who go there have long hair and wear dresses.
Like, for a little TMI, it's kind of like when I have to go for a prostate exam. It's not an invalidation of me being a woman. It's a very sex-specific thing.
And
Okay,
you have
so-
your
so-
own special healthcare, right? You have trans-affirming healthcare.
So-
like neither men or women.
When I'm generally talking about women's spaces, I'm either talking about the bathrooms, the change rooms, or the prisons or the sports spots. You want to talk about the hospitals and stuff, that's fine. The general contention that most people have when it comes to access these spaces, they're referring to bathrooms, they're referring to change rooms, and they're referring to like places where they're actually like very physically vulnerable.
And the reason this confusion
The-
happens is because there are people that fail to make this distinction on both sides, right? When people are answering that confusion on the left, it's because they're also not making the distinction between female and women. So they're just saying trans women are women. And that's why they also try to make arguments that now suddenly trans women are like biologically female or something like that, or cis women, that there's no difference or something. It's a
Okay,
failure
so,
on both sides of the
so let me ask you, I'll just keep it more simple. Do you feel like when it comes to change rooms and bathrooms, trans women should have access to those spaces?
It really depends. I guess they can. We could probably get to a place, right? I think a lot of that is societal. The reason that we have a separation between bathrooms in the first place, I think, has a lot more to do with just social niceties and the things that we're sort of accustomed to. Because there are definitely places where there are no separations. You go to Tibet, every bathroom's a fucking hole in the ground with like a knee-high wall where everybody can see for miles around. And
Really?
We'll just think to North America. Do you think in the North American context, the way the bathrooms are currently set up, should they have access to those change rooms and those bathrooms?
Whether they should is going to depend on like the social attitudes by and large, and like what allows society to function. That's my answer to that. That's the only good answer I can give to that. Right now, it feels like we're not really ready, but we could be in a pretty short order.
I would say it would be great for us to move in that direction. So that would be the ideal direction to go.
Okay, so I just want to ask this question. Aren't the differences that exist in prison spaces as well as sports, or like even the implied physical differences, aren't they also going to be pronounced within bathrooms and change rooms as well?
No.
Okay, then I would just disagree with that.
Not as much
In
ecosystem.
sports, your success or your failure in the sport is directly tied into your sex. Whether or not you successfully use the bathroom, it doesn't matter if the person next to you is a dick or not.
And you're not forced to be there.
So here's my contention. Here's my point of contention. The reason why they were denying the trans women's access to the prisons for sex offense crimes is because their capacity for violence. So the ability to actually harm people is what they judged when they said you don't have access to a space. That capacity for violence still exists in other spaces where women are vulnerable, be it change rooms or bathrooms. So I don't understand what the difference is.
The difference is that it's not an expected violent arena to fight in a bathroom, number one. Like people aren't generally going into bathrooms to fight. Now, if that was the thing, if we had a culture of everybody fighting in bathrooms, maybe we'd feel a bit different. And then number two, people aren't being admitted into and locked into bathrooms. If that was the case, we'd probably feel different about it as well. But people can freely come and go in bathrooms. You're locked in a prison or a jail, and you have to spend time there with other people around you. So I think those two things make it.
That the people going to the bathroom inherently have like shown some disregard for social contracts or something.
Sure, and even that isn't relevant. If we were locked in bathrooms for 10 hours, like let's say when you went to the bathroom, you'd be locked in there for 3 hours, people would probably feel on both sides quite a bit different about this conversation. But you're not.
You don't think that's
and
relevant?
it's also a concentration point of criminality, right? So you have an obligation to ensure the safety among a very volatile group as it is.
That's what Wicked Supreme just said. Yeah, but I kind of. I don't think it matters as much. I mean, it kind of does, but I'm just saying, like, even if we ignore that, if you say you're going to lock somebody in an area for a little bit, I think that men and women being locked together in a room is going to carry a way different connotation, which is, I think, what prison is like. I think that's the big deal, is the state is like forcing you to be there for some period of time.
Okay,
Now,
so can I
one
just
area where I think we could kind of like find a little bit of where things could become a little bit different is when you divide based on like violent criminality, right? Like, because I wouldn't be as concerned if the person were in prison for something non-violent, where they weren't like violently taking advantage of, well, for instance, women. So if they came in for something that was non-violent, but my view is I don't think we should be imprisoning people for non-violent offenses. But
does that
overall,
actually determine the likelihood of somebody being violent in prison? I'm curious.
I think it would reduce it.
Well, like I'm saying, like, do we think that, like, if we did like a huge study, are non-violent drug offenders in prison far less likely to engage in violent behavior than people admitted for violent crimes?
You know who you could ask about this? Your friend Martin Shkreli.
Good one.
I'm not really sure of that one. That one I'd go based off sort of an intuition, which if they're not already prone to violence and they aren't coming in for a violent crime, it probably stands to reason that they are less likely to commit violent offenses while in prison.
I don't know if that. I don't think that necessarily logically follows, but
Well, in prison, isn't there pressure to like choose a
there
group,
is.
be violent? We're talking about an ecosystem that is a different bubble than anything we can compare it to.
Sure, and then also like there's like, not to sound judgmental or whatever, but like generally if you're in prison, there's probably a reason, and the crowds you run with are probably pretty tough. Like it's not like you're in prison, like it's not like the average prison person that's assigned there because of drugs. It's like some nerdy dude that just like bought Adderall from somebody that they weren't supposed to, right? You know, you get people that are buying and selling drugs and shit that are come from a rougher crowd. Like they're probably going to be more prone to violence than like a normal citizen, I would imagine.
It's probably fair, yeah. So
This is why I hate generalizations. P.S.
and
You,
so
without
here-
generalizations, your world doesn't
through.
exist. You can't say that. You love
know.
generalizations. Your
I
world,
know.
your whole world hinges on
Just-
generalizations. So I
Look,
don't.
in order for the world to get better enough to accept LGBT people, enough for people not to be afraid of trans women, for enough people to be blah, 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 there has to be an acknowledgement of cultural differences, belief systems, literal government entities. Like, we are dealing with layers of nuance. And, like, I don't think there's a solution here to be made on a general, like, the general populace is too big now.
Yeah, but we can't have individual prisons for every individual.
Yeah, it's everything has to be
I
generalized
know.
to some extent, of course.
That sucks, but I think that's the problem. I think that's why the solution is limited.
But it's
because
literally
we're not,
necessary to make these generalizations.
For sure, I understand that, but I'm just trying to say, like, the next part of this conversation is, like, maybe if we reach for something better, we'll have something more than the status quo. But right now,
Well-
we're all still reaching for the status quo.
And this is why I was saying before, have them in the women's prison, but administratively segregated. Unfortunately, that didn't work in that one situation with the trans woman who raped a woman in the prison.
Yeah, the problem is most
But-
prisons are like clown fiestas. If the staff are raping women,
Is that
you can
even
imagine
legal?
how-
Yeah.
Hold on. Is that even? Hold on. Is that
And they
even?
may not all be properly equipped
Is
to
that
do
legal?
that kind of thing.
Is that legal? I don't even think that would be legal. If you're saying only trans women who create violent offenses have to be segregated in a women's prison versus the cis women,
Yeah,
then I
until a
think
certain
that
period
I'm
of
pretty
demonstration.
confident that's illegal and a discrimination of a pretty strong order. No.
Well, no, I don't think it would be. Prisons actually are allowed to get away with quite a bit more in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, don't they like make money off you in America? when you're in
Um,
prison?
That's relatively rare, but
But
Okay.
but then I was talking about then have that transition period where they're kind of like gradually introduced to the general population over time. And if you find them doing things that are like untoward or something, then you can go and say, okay, nope, we're rolling it back a little bit. You got to wait a little bit longer, before we feel comfortable releasing you to the general population. It's something like that, a transition period. So I don't see a big issue with that. It sucks because administrative segregation, I think, is also pretty shitty because people need to be, when you're in an environment where you're already locked up against your will, it's even worse when you're not allowed to associate with the general population. So you do want to get them associating with the general population as soon as possible, but there's not really a good answer otherwise. You can't have them with the general population in the men's prison, right? It's just not feasible. So you got to have something. So, and I would say bring them into the women's prison, segregate them, and do some kind of transitional program to get them with the general population.
Case closed. Good work,
So,
Detective Zonia. You did it.
I thought about bringing something up. I don't know. I mean, this just to get your guys' opinion. This is something I don't usually talk about much, but like from something that I do, and I'm sure like some people will probably not like it, and some people will be empathetic to it, and some people will probably do it as well. But I find myself trying to do things to sort of minimize my the way that my stature and my behavior affects cis women, because I'm large, I transitioned late, and very broad and masculine frame. So I try to do things to sort of like play all that down. It's not just about passing, because I notice when women look at me in a bathroom and kind of double take and kind of stiffen up or something, and or when I'm in a women's space or something. And so I try to go out of my way to like not have an imposing posture, try to downplay my frame a bit, and be aware of things, like because I'm raised as a boy, I was raised to be like assertive and forward and all these other things that were very just normal for boys and men and expected. And so that's just the default for me because of how I was raised. So I've done so many things to sort of downplay all the things that would cause my stature to be imposing in the presence of women in like women's spaces.
Have you encountered being excluded or like rejected from women's spaces?
I have I've been fortunate to not have too many of those situations, but there were times where I chose to not go to the bathroom because of a look that I got that showed that someone was alarmed that I was approaching the women's bathroom, and I changed my mind. There was a time I was driving down to LA, and it's a long haul down I-5, and in one of the towns on I-5, I wanted to go to the bathroom and I couldn't. I ended up instead having to go on the side of the road because there's really not, like, I was worried something would happen, and so I just decided I wasn't going to go, and the next stop for a bathroom was quite a ways down the road.
So would you say like you're afraid of women as much as like, or in a different way than you are of men, like when you go to the bathroom?
I'm more afraid about like if I'm gonna get the the phone on my face live streaming me to like TikTok or something,
or the
or
cops
someone
called
calling
on
the cops,
you, or falsely, like that sounds awful.
Yeah, so a few times I've avoided bathrooms, especially in those towns that are more conservative along I-5.
Yeah.
I tend to be okay here in the Bay Area, but yeah, when I get outside of the Bay Area, things get a little bit more iffy. And I've had a couple of little scary incidents. In one case, a woman screamed for her husband, who was in the men's bathroom next door.
Oh.
And that one really scared me.
See, this is okay. This is.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, like, this is, and I know I'm the outlier here. I understand that. But this is why my work is predicated on getting people to understand that you do not have a lived experience with the types of people you are very afraid of, right? If there's discrimination happening, it's from often a misunderstanding or a belief system. And I think if more people, not new trans people, but understood the like trans reality better, not through the progressive lens, but through the actual reality of the lens, people would be hopefully prepared to be less afraid. Because again, like coming from a conservative background, I didn't know a trans person until I started hanging out LGBT spaces, and it took me a while to kind of like, okay, cool, like the trans experience. But I understand how some people would have the negative stereotype in their head. Like prisons are like the worst parts of our society, including the guards and the prison system itself is like, I think, the worst representation of our society. So like regular people in regular society, I'm concerned how to get them to stop being afraid of who's in the bathroom next to them, even if it is warranted sometimes. Yeah. Again, I'm never going to get my mom to understand why I'm comfortable going to the bathroom with men or trans people, like everybody. I don't care your gender. I'm very like, I don't care. But the thing is, those spaces were made to make you not care because they're a safe space. But regular society, public spaces, the only way to make them safe spaces is to generalize in a way that is helpful or was helpful, but it's becoming less helpful.
Man,
because even cis women have been stopped in front of bathrooms during this like fear tirade, and that's the problem. Even cis women are being attacked.
Brittany, you are such an empath. It's beautiful.
Yeah, like that was something I remember back in 2016, like TYT reported on this thing where a cis woman had been, like, someone had gate kept her from the bathroom and chased her out just because she didn't look, traditionally feminine. And do
you think that was fair?
Multiple incidents since then.
Do you think that's fair?
No.
That they chased her out? Okay, so I'm going to bring up the spicy take here. So Destiny said that if you don't pass enough, you shouldn't have access to these spaces.
I mean, that's the first thing I said, that I've been jump scared by more butch lesbians than I have ever with trans people. So
hold up. So
I wouldn't say butch lesbians can't be in the
Zonia, hold on.
I want to know what Destiny's threshold would be, like some examples of that.
I'm never going to be able to give you an example. You know this. That's just how gender expression works. The reality is that like we gender people all the time and determine whether or not they belong in a given space, right? I could be wrong, but I've never heard of even like a therapy session or whatever where people are doing like a genitalia check to see if you belong there, right? Like we gender people based on how they look. That's just how it goes.
So would you say, like, if they had probably like the more pronounced masculine traits, which would be like beard, right?
Yeah, it's going to be beard, broad shoulders, certain facial structures, certain body structures.
Broad shoulders. Yeah. I'll never be able to go into Destiny's women's room.
Ooh, hold on. Wait, no, Brittany. I want Destiny to respond to that because that's actually important. Destiny, how do you feel about the fact that Zonia would not be able access to the spaces that you'd like because you don't feel like
I've never said she wouldn't get access to things like bathrooms and shit. I don't think that sex matters there. I don't care if guys go into women's bathrooms. I think it's stupid. Nobody cares. Or I don't think you should care. That society can function. But like, would I admit Zonia to like an all-females prison? I'm not sure. It would have to be like a... Dude, it's so annoying. It would have to be a background check on how long the person has been trans, basically.
Okay. Zonia, what do you think about that?
I mean, for the background check on how long someone's been on HRT, that definitely makes sense. As for stature, that's a difficult one. Like, because, like, I transitioned late, so I've got my full stature as, you know, I would have been a male, right? Or am basically biologically male. So I've got the full stature, 6'1", broad shoulders, big arms, even though I don't have much in the way of muscle on them anymore. So I look imposing, which is why I go through and go through a lot of effort to downplay all of that. But yeah, because so what this hinged off of was Abba saying that you would gatekeep the bathrooms.
No, I never said that ever. I never said that.
Okay.
He said women's spaces, but he didn't specify. Now he's caveating and saying prisons.
I said in the beginning, I said
that's
places
fair.
where the sex matters, not where the gender matters. I don't think the sex matters.
They
that much
can
for
roll back the
bathrooms.
tape. The first time I asked you, didn't say it, but it's okay. Now that you've clarified, I understand better. So it doesn't.
That makes more sense. Yeah, then we don't really disagree much. One of the things that I really liked was, now here's a little bit of a throwback, dating myself as well, but back when I was like going to goth clubs and stuff in the 90s, one of the things that I loved about that environment and that space is that gender was really free flowing, and nobody cared about like who was what gender and which bathrooms they went into and all that stuff. You'd have boys and girls both going into the same bathroom to do their things, both applying eyeliner in the same bathroom. Nobody cared. It was really, really free spirited and free flowing, and that, in my opinion, would be like the ideal situation with bathrooms. But unfortunately, that is a very select group of people who tend to be very free-spirited, easygoing, not really into, you know, aggressing on people, very chill. So it's a very controlled selection group, right?
That's kind of the conundrum about this, that we, like, what's being suggested is that we kind of have to clock people based on heuristics for how dedicated they are to, like, a given gender performance or whatever the fuck.
We already do that though, but yeah.
No, I agree, but you're saying that that's how we should do things, and I agree. Like, when it comes to...
Well, the only alternative is a genitalia check, right?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that's the only alternative.
Well,
but-
how else
Do
are
you
you going to
think
figure
men-
out what somebody's sex is?
Do you think men are also
Are you trying to
embarrassed
make me
have women
forget
in
what
their
I was
locker
trying to
rooms?
say, or what? Do you want to just, like...
Sorry.
hold
Go
on
ahead.
every word?
Well, it's just like we like say things and we just brush over them. But I think we're like, oh, like we can never, like if we do this, then that means that it would be like checking somebody's gender with just looking at it. It's like, yeah, we do that all the time. We have that's like necessarily that's a necessary function of society. You don't check
Okay.
anybody's genitalia. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's funny. When I started the sentence, did I say sex or gender?
Your mom, that's what you said.
Okay, I
Because
said
we have
gender.
sex.
And just now you wanted Abba to, you know, make sure that he understood that you were talking about separation based on sex. And I said the only way we can do this is heuristics based on gender, right? Like, in order to determine if somebody belongs in like a women's space or something like that, which is supposed to be separated based on sex or physiology or something like that, we kind of have to clock them heuristics that are gender performances. And like the only thing that's about the conundrum here is that fucking all it does is reinforce the you know, the importance of how rigorously we fucking adhere to a gender role in society. And maybe some people just don't give a fuck.
Yes. I mean, that would necessitate that they conform to gender roles and gender stereotypes in order to make that a possibility. Which, I mean, if you want to go that way, that's fine. But I do think that this discussion and the fact that people have to pass in order to get access to these spaces is incredibly racist. Since it normally means that people... Hold up, let me finish. Let me finish. Since it normally means that those who are financially disadvantaged have the least amount of access to some of these treatments and some of these things that would help you pass. Meaning that it would overwhelmingly be POC, people of color, trans people, BIPOC, whatever you want to use, who would be sent to the wrong prison and then have their lives put at risk because they didn't pass enough because they couldn't pay. Yeah, there's a racial bias there.
The
Also
reality is just going to
disproportionately
be
affect-
insulting like androgynous people all of the time because you're more likely to be picking up on those people than you are actually like an actual trans person. Like it's just going to be manly looking men and feminine looking.
Yeah, and so the reason why some of them would quote unquote look manly, the reason why some of them would quote unquote look manly is because some of them are too poor to be able to afford the treatments or the surgeries or some of the other accessories that would enable them to pass a lot easier. Thus not meeting the threshold, thus being put in the prison with the males, which would put their lives at risk because they pass enough to probably be good enough to fucking rape, but they don't pass enough to be put in a space that would actually keep them safe. So yeah, there is an absolute racial bias.
Wait,
in this
aren't you
involved.
Canadian?
And-
Don't you
and there would
motherfuckers
also
have
be-
this shit figured out?
and it would also be disproportionately affecting kids that were born into and raised by more socially conservative families that aren't as comfortable with their kid transitioning or getting
Right.
early access to
Right. So
treatment.
Zonia, do you not then take back what you said earlier in regards to saying it is a matter of how well they perform their gender, that they should get access to these spaces? Because if you don't, then you're pretty much in agreement with what makes those kids or what makes those poor people be
I
put in
don't
dangerous
think that-
situations.
Oh no, I don't. I'm not taking the position that people have to perform that to get access to those spaces. I'm taking the position that it's understandable why it is that that women are on guard when people who don't perform well. or
Wait,
look
no, because
disproportionately
earlier you
masculine.
definitely agreed with Destiny. When Destiny said the only way you get access to women's spaces, and he's clarified prisons, for example,
Prisons.
is that they have to be able to present to a certain degree, which means they have to perform that gender. Now you're saying you
No,
don't
he
agree
was
with that
saying
statement.
he was saying a measure of like how long they've been transitioned, right? Which is for
But how would
prison.
you measure that if they don't present well enough?
Well, that would have to do with how long they've been on HRT, right?
Is HRT? Hold up, am I confused? Is HRT like not cost money?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Then is it more classist than racist?
But unfortunately, in that situation, we're having to make that decision based. Where I said that I'm mostly in agreement with them on that position, but I still think that there should be like a transitionary period where you effectively do like what I stated before. You put them into administrative segregation in the women's facility, and then you go through some sort of transition period there. And the prison at that point can provide the medical support necessary for their medical transition, and then also for helping out with their social transition.
So if they not transitioned before because they can't afford it and they were able to perform their gender, because it can be expensive if you don't have surgery or things like that, for a lot of trans people, then they would be put in the male's prison until they get put on HRT for enough time, and then they get transferred if they present enough.
That one is a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they haven't done any transition at all, what do you do with them?
There you go, Destiny.
guess
Say it.
the
There you,
No.
I
Destiny,
think
go ahead, say it.
I think what you would have to do is like you get the you'd probably, as the prison, have to get the informed consent from them to start transition, and then go ahead and say, okay, we will put you in the women's prison as soon as you're ready to start the transition, but you'll be on administrative segregation for a while until
Whoa. So are we forcing people to medical transition? Wait, what if they never were going to do medical transition?
Then f- them, they can stay at whatever prison they were born
Then-
in.
Here's the
Whoa.
Here's the thing.
whoa.
I don't know that you could really safely house someone who hasn't gone through medical transition. Remember, the criteria that I was going for before was with a violent past, right?
Oh,
Or
okay.
and violent crime. You can't safely put them in the same general population with
Hold up. Right now, we're not talking about violence, criminals.
Just
We're
regular people?
No. We're talking about people who created non-violent offenses. I know you don't believe they should be in prison, but they go to prison. Okay,
With
so
our
they're in
current
prison
system,
right
yeah.
now, and they are a male, and they haven't gone through HRT or any of the stuff that would make them ultimately present very well because they can't afford it, whatever it is. Now they're being put in the male's prison. That's how it started with you. Is that not correct?
Okay, so in that particular scenario, I would say probably we could do like a transition thing, but it wouldn't have to force them on.
Sorry, what does that mean? What does that mean, the transition thing?
Probably a social transition, right? I don't know how exactly you would manage that, but some way to ensure that they can be socially integrated with the general population of women and not be a threat to them. Right.
Okay,
So
how
you don't
would you
necessarily know.
how would that look? Basically, I'm gonna just tell you what I understood from what you said. Socially transitioning means like making them look like women based off of things that not necessarily HRT before they can integrate. Is that what I
Yeah.
understood?
Yeah. I'm not sure how you would do that in our prison system because our
Yeah,
prison
like
system
what? Do
is
they gotta
like-
wear certain outfits or get a wig
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
they
like-
get
like
the,
a
like
they
haircut?
get the
probably-
pink jumpsuits.
Yeah.
Yo, this
you
sounds
wouldn't
work
crazy.
in Germany,
because
but
that
not
That sounds
here.
crazy. That's
There
not
Yeah.
no, there are butch females in women's
Yeah,
prisons.
or-
That has nothing to do with it.
That's
Like,
true.
Yeah.
That
I
wouldn't
think
work.
Destiny is right. You would have to have first off, Abba, if you're trying to get us to advocate for some sort of like public healthcare system that funds people to transition or something based on if they
How
show presenting
Canadian.
signs of severe enough gender dysphoria or something, I don't think you're going to find any opposition in here. I feel like most of us in here are
No, I'm
probably-
definitely not
Well-
advocating for that.
I already live in one of those.
Well,
so.
okay.
We
Yeah,
do
yeah.
have
Yeah.
we do have medical support in the prison system. So if you do get diagnosed with certain things, you can go through medical transition on the prison's dollar, but which is the taxpayer dollar, obviously.
Yeah. And from then on, I
Um,
feel like it would just be as simple as, again, like we have this
Yeah.
separation between male and females for prisons based on sex. So if you're not dedicated, like if you don't have gender dysphoria that makes you already, interested or want to approach HRT or something like that, or that you wouldn't even accept it even if it were offered to you, then at that point, it's
fuck
like, well,
'em.
then you've got to be in the male prison. If you're going to
Saying.
be a male, if you're not going
Yeah.
to do anything to change your sex, then you have to be in the male prison.
Because
Obviously.
you basically, when you're housing a whole bunch of criminals, even like, because Destiny made a good point earlier, even if they're not violent criminals necessarily, or they're for violent offenses, they're coming from sort of an underworld where there's often a tendency for violence, and they're exposed to a lot of violence, and so the odds of them being prone to violence are much higher. So you really have to take sort of a volatile concoction and do the best thing you can to ensure the safety of the majority, of the vast majority. And so that does mean that unfortunately some of the policies aren't going to be entirely fair. So probably, yeah, pressing me on this, I would say there would need to be a medical transition in order for that kind of thing to be considered viable.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. Like the thing was, I wasn't even thinking. I realized, yeah, our prison system is so different.
Yeah.
Well, like a lot of prison systems, but so like some of the better ones I like to think of oftentimes when I think of like a good way to run a prison system would be like Germany, where they actually have them wearing their preference of clothes and street clothes, and they do it to humanize them, and they came up with that policy in the wake of the Holocaust, because they're like, no, we're not going to dehumanize people anymore, right? And I think it's a really good policy. It'd be great if we had that kind of thing, because I think that would probably improve the conditions in prison and allow people to be a little bit more humanized and less treated like animals or numbers, and so less.
But
likely
you
to
acknowledge
act
that
like
all of these
animals.
all these rules that you're laying out still discriminate heavily against poor, right?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Alright, that's fair,
Which
that's fair.
unfortunately disproportionately affects certain communities of color.
Yes,
in
yes.
Okay, so this
Brittany earlier said it's not racism, it's classism, but I mean, those two can
Oh,
intersect a lot of the
classism,
time.
yeah.
Intersectionality
Yeah,
is a
they
thing,
overlap,
Brittany,
obviously.
so I'm going to need you to...
I'm
keep up.
aware, thank you. Don't explain it to me. I am curious, is it too childish to assume that humans could get to the point where maybe we segregate via violent criminals and non-violent offenders, and maybe we can start there? Because
already-
I
like,
mean, we
already do
already
that.
have different
California
categories.
is starting
Well,
to do that.
but I mean to say,
especially-
like, I wonder if it could extend to gender with the
Wait,
same
what do we?
idea.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sex has to be separated. Full stop. Unless you have proof of somebody transitioning early on. That's it. There is no transitioning in prison. If you're going to, then you're getting castrated. Like, we're going to do the full-on drug therapy, whatever. There is no social transition. There is no... Stop. There is no social transition bullshit. If you're going to transition, once you've gone into prison, then you're going to do the full drug therapy and everything if you want to qualify for it. Otherwise, you go to the prison that you're assigned sex at birth, and then that's
Yes.
it. That's the only way that it
Base.
works. Is it unfair to some
Base.
people? Yeah, sure. But I mean, like, you can't... to placate a very, very, very small subset of people, you can't make an entire other population at risk. That's the only answer. I haven't heard anything else that even remotely addresses like all the issues.
Yes. I think Destiny 2023 is probably his best year. This is fine.
Fuck, kill yourself.
Hey, I'm not. Listen, this is an unapologetic. Yes, I'm approved.
God, they
I
call me
want-
a dick rider. Jesus Christ.
Hey, listen. When someone gets problematic, I can appreciate it. Once you do the same thing, Wicked, I'll appreciate you.
Left your fucking buddy of the year.
Hey, I
trophy on
basically said the
podium.
same thing a few minutes ago when you pressed me. on it.
No,
Wait, we all said
you
the
did it.
same
You did
thing.
it with 100 caveats, and you were kind of finding the way. But if I honestly was to summarize your point, your basic point was like, if you're poor, get fucked, which is fine. But I think Destiny just did it more concisely and more problematic.
So if you're trans, get fucked. If you're poor, get fucked. If you're black,
So that's
get
No,
what
fucked.
I
if you're legitimately trans and you've got like medical documentation or shit like that, then you can go to the prison that you're assigned in, and then if you're not, then it's tough luck. Then
It just
if it's,
sucks. 'Cause
See,
not every
I
trans
would
person
say
medically
if you
if you're a trans person, you don't want to medically transition, then that's fine. Then all the
just
none,
sucks.
none of the trans
See,
shit applies to you anyway, right? If you're
I would
if
go
you're
back-
if you're
You end up
if
in
you're
prison.
if you're AMAB, if you're assigned male at birth and you want to go to jail, what the reasons why you wouldn't feel
want to go to
safe?
jail.
Wanna go to
He wants to
jail?
go to jail.
Okay. The reasons why you're assigned a different jail aren't going to apply to you, right? If you're assigned male at birth and you call yourself a trans woman, but you never make any effort whatsoever to actually transition, then you have no problems about feeling safe or not feeling safe or whatever. You still have all the muscle mass, all the normal advantages or whatever that an assigned male at birth person has.
See,
Are you
I would
saying
just still go back
get
to what I.
presented-
I would just say, I agree with that, but I would still go back to what I said. That if they want to transition after the conviction, then there should be a pathway for them to go through
give
that
them a choice.
process.
Maybe
Sure,
like
there
you
should
know,
be,
make your
but it
choice.
has to be
Okay.
a hardcore. It has to be like actual transition, not like I'm identifying as this and I don't even shave kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I?
that's what we said.
Yeah. Can I ask another question on this topic?
Well, Brittany was just going to say something. I cut her off.
Oh yeah,
I just want
Brit-
to say this, but I don't know that it matters. I guess like maybe I'm too close to this situation as well, because like my cousin's in prison, and I think about him, and he's been assaulted a lot, and I just think about how he didn't go in for a violent crime. It was a 3-strike law. I don't understand like. There was a little bit, everyone thinks there's iffiness in their case, but like, you know how it goes. But like, it's one of those things where in my head, I'd like to wonder if we care about men as well in prisons. Like, not just trans people
No,
are
no,
getting...
we don't.
Okay,
I can
but I'd
make
like
it super
to
easy
think,
for you.
maybe I just want a solution where I'm hearing like, hey, how do we avoid violence in prison? And is there a way to reform prisons
you
in
don't.
general?
You can't.
I love Germany's model. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah,
What,
okay, so that's
Auschwitz?
like a lot of
No.
European
Oh my
Those
god.
systems are better.
Yeah, that
than
was
this.
wild. That was wild.
Oh wait, that was funny. It just hit me.
Oh my
It just hit
gosh.
me.
Wait, what
No.
happened at Auschwitz?
Nice.
Which one? Which Auschwitz?
Germans.
Yeah,
I heard,
I mean, I don't know if
I
someone's
heard
got
Birkenau
answers.
was
or
fire.
if you want to say maybe the prison model in Germany is better, then fantastic. I'll take it. For me, I don't have an answer. I think you throw enough men into space, no women, people with violent, untended to past, and then stick them in a small confined cell with the current system that America has in regards to policing and then also rehabilitating people. There's like no way you're ever gonna have people not be violent. This is not violent. You'd have to fix society on a whole scale before you even think about the prisons.
People are violent everywhere. They're violent in our homes. They're
Stop!
violent-
Oh my God, Brittany, stop!
So cringe.
They're clearly
so cringe.
more violent in prison than they are in their homes. Okay?
Yes.
Obviously,
stop.
obviously, I know that. I'm just saying it's interesting to me that we get like prison is a reflection of society, in my opinion, because society recreates itself in prison, but to a violent or more constrained degree. Like even if
Sure.
you're not really white, you kind of if you look white, you should be with
Exactly.
the white people because of so I'm saying it is more extreme, but I wish we knew it was a reflection of us in a heightened situation.
I think we do.
So how
we
do
do know that our
de-escalate?
prisons. No. I think they do know that their prisons are a reflection of society. That's why I just said you have to fix society in order to even think about fixing the
Oh,
prisons. There's a
then
reason
I
why.
agree with that.
That depends because like California prisons are known for being unusually segregated by race that a lot of other states don't have the same issue of.
Also, it can't, anytime you're trying to talk about a particular issue, we can't be like, well, we also need to fix all of society, because then it makes it we can never talk about any
But I
issue.
think that you guys are like these are we were all so scared about trans people right now. Just fix prisons and maybe trans people will have an
Yeah,
easier
but that's
time
like
in prison.
that's like saying like, oh, like I think it sucks that like sometimes like little children are sex trafficked, and it's like, okay, well let's just fix the economy around the world so they don't have to do that. But it's like, okay.
I just think it's fucked
Okay,
up that our
okay.
only solution is force them to transition.
The reason why I said that, Destiny, is because I think if you take schooling, for example, it's like, yeah, can you fix up schools to be a lot better to make children feel much more safe and be more apt? Sure, you can actually have that conversation. It's not the worst
Sure,
one.
yeah.
I think until you make sure that the parents are actually accessible for kids' learning experiences, that the kids actually get nutrition at home enough to be able to actually eat, until you create like societal conditions that actually will repair vast majority of the problems that exist in our school system, I think like, I don't know, to me that just seems like a more fruitful discussion.
It
And when I
is,
think
but I'm
about-
just saying you can't hijack every discussion with like, let's fix the world, because
Fair,
that would fix
fair.
every single problem ever, right?
Fair,
For sure.
that's fair.
I don't work in prisons. I'm not in prison. I feel really unqualified to talk about this. So maybe I should just head out. But thank you guys so much for a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
I love you, Brittany. Be
Take care,
careful.
Brittany.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so what are we doing with trans men who've transitioned? Which one are they going to?
I think the same thing could apply that we talked about, which is like, you know, listen, are you male or are you female? Your choice is going to be permanent going forward. Maybe we'll give you what you need to, you know, whatever HRT, whatever it is to do that transition. But
Okay.
you know, whatever.
That transition would have to be kept super quiet. They'd have to find some way to prevent the general population from knowing that they're a trans man. That would be so difficult.
Oh,
Yeah,
true.
Because
Yeah,
if they
but-
go into a shower and they don't have a
penis.
prosthetic penis, then
Yay.
boom, they are going to get.
And they're probably going to be a little bit more yoked because all that tea they taken. So obviously, like, because they're going to start presenting more as a male based off the drugs and stuff they take as a result of like hormone therapy, they won't be different than the female population.
They're kind of in a more fucked situation because
Yup.
they can't be in the women's or the men's prison.
No. If you put some trans men in the men's, oh, hey, listen, they won't need the women soon. So I'm just saying you can't be doing that either.
That's a rough one.
Almost
True.
like you need a trans wing, isn't it?
Not enough trans people. It basically would be for trans men. I don't know.
No.
think so.
The thing isn't that there isn't enough trans people in America. It's like you have to think every single prison would then have to create
Yeah.
a new wing for such a small population because
Or
if
they'd
you
have to
divvy,
ship you all.
yeah, they have to
like,
ship them
shipping
all into one specific prison,
Like a
which would be
federal
super
facility.
tough because like visitation would be impossible for a lot of these people. Because imagine like the prisons all the way in fucking Iowa, where
I mean,
everyone
they do
living in
that
Southern
already
California.
quite a lot as well. But
Yeah, but generally, regionally speaking, it's just a lot more manageable. I don't disagree. I think that would probably be the most likely solution.
nice.
Yeah, I imagine. I don't know. I'm actually really curious. What is the number of like trans men and trans women that go to prison that serve some prison time?
You're also
I
you're
bet-
having a really hard time beating the trans genocide allegations if we start making prisons for trans people. Because as soon as one person dies in there,
Oh.
everybody's gonna lose their fucking mind and it's gonna be all over.
Just the fact that there's a dedicated prison, everybody would be signaling at that. That's a sign. They're trying to get
Well,
rid of us all. They're
that's
going to exterminate
ridiculous.
us.
I mean, for the same reason, it would be ridiculous to say that there's a women's genocide because we have like female prisons or something, right? Like, sure,
Have
it's
you
a
met?
larger population.
Have you met trans Twitter?
No, that's probably why. I don't know. Maybe why I have my sanity. I don't know.
Zonia, if you were to say this on trans Twitter, what would happen to you?
Oh, I see this kind of shit on trans Twitter all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I get in trouble a lot.
All right, let me subscribe to your Twitter right now.
You should see the current thing that's on there that's getting some attention.
Okay.
I'm just enjoying the fact that Zerka's been in here the entire time muted.
Yeah, because I fucking muted him.
Oh, why is he muted?
'Cause I
Oh,
fucking muted him.
Why
Poor
would he
guy.
not be muted?
Awesome.
No, he deserved it.
I
think that's all my questions on Dread, so I'll let you
Hashtag
guys
free Zerka.
God no.
I think we should just have prisons that listen. I think like most things in life, we can get a lot of wisdom from the NES game Ice Hockey. Remember, you know, you can pick like the big guy or the middle guy or the skinny guy or whatever. That's what we should do. We should just have 3 classifications for prisons, and it should follow the Ice Hockey rules.
Wow.
What the fuck are
Or
the
boxing
ice hockey
rules. Like the boxing rules. Featherweights go in one prison.
Yeah, we could do that.
Bottoms and tops go in another prison.
I like ice hockey.
Good for you.
I don't know anything about ice hockey.
You never played the Nintendo game Ice Hockey where you can pick like the fat guys or like the skinny guys or the middle
Oh
guys?
yeah, I did.
The skinny
yeah.
guys are faster, but the fat guys can like knock everybody on their ass.
Yep, I did.
That's my boomer joke.
Glad to know we played the same games.
You were a Blades of Steel person?
I did play Blades of Steel, yeah.
You would just
Well,
get in
my
fights
friends-
intentionally to play it like a fighting game?
It was fun when that would happen. Yeah, honestly, none of these things have easy answers, right? And no matter what, for a while at least, unfortunately, a certain minority population will probably be disproportionately negatively affected by these things. It's going to take time for us to work out how to make these kinds of things work, and there's going to be a lot of hurdles along the road. Progress doesn't happen overnight.
How did we get here from a discussion about rape? Let's take a turn.
We could go back to the topic
I did
about
that.
rape.
I did that as soon as
Abba
I
did
had a
that.
chance. I said
Typical. Just trying to fucking dive bomb Destiny's career more? Is that it?
Do you guys think that if you're a trans person or you're already transitioning, should you be allowed to say the N-word if it's in a rap song? Since we've got Abba here, do you want to do that discussion next, or what other ones? do we
Hey,
have?
you can.
Wait,
I think
everybody
you
say
think
it if
this
it's in a
makes me
song?
look weird. Feel
Yeah.
free. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I like
cool.
this stuff. Go ahead. I
Wait.
want all you white folks to say they should be able to say the N-word. Go say it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're singing along with the song. that
No,
makes
stop!
sense,
I was
right?
just kidding. Stop. We're not doing this.
Destiny, keep playing that game. I got a big YouTube channel. I can cover this at any point.
Good, yeah, that's
Put
what
all
I
you
want.
motherfuckers on blast.
We're gonna cover this goofy streamer today, guys.
3 years later, and we still got the N-word discourse going on.
True.
Abba, did you ever like organize the D&D stuff you wanted to do?
I mean, I asked Destiny, but Destiny's kind of busy right now doing all his political stuff in StarCraft. So I respect it. He said if he's open to it at some point, you're gonna do it. So when that happens, that's great. If not, then it is what it is.
But do you want to do like a one-shot or something?
I hate doing one shots. The reason why I don't like
You
doing
hate
one shots
them?
is because one, it feels
okay.
like I'm getting blue balled just when things get good, and two, I think the best part about playing D&D in general is just building a story and seeing the characters develop over time. One shots, I don't feel like you get a chance to do.
Yeah, no, valid. I just wondered if you wanted to do like a shorter campaign to like try some shit out. But yeah, that's valid. No worries.
How do you feel about? Do you like the separation of bathrooms between sexes, Abba? Do you think we should keep the current course of separating bathrooms by sex?
I already answered that earlier.
No, Abba. I said Abba.
He answered that earlier. Didn't you?
No, he just asked us. I think.
Oh, that's right. I thought he kind of gave an answer though. Oh.
Well, I'm asking him now. I don't know why you can't just answer. He's sitting right here. Oh, okay. Never mind. I forgot. You have a career. You've got a career that you want to make. My bad. Never mind.
What do you think?
Hello? Were you not here, Abba?
What is that music?
Sorry, I muted myself.
Spines here?
No. If you want to ask a question, I'll answer. I really don't care.
What do you think should be the fate of bathrooms separated by sex? Do you like the current status quo? Do you think it should be more like open to more people or whatever the fuck?
Yeah. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't believe in this whole idea of like gender expression really dictating whether or not someone is the thing. I don't really think about gender when I think about women and men. I think I've always used gender in my personal life and when I thought about womanhood in the function of sex. So for me, that's the only really way I care about it. But generally, like that's just my take on it. And then from there, if I meet a trans woman or anybody who says I'm this or that, I'll use whatever gender pronoun you want or whatever name you want. But beyond that, if you think about spaces, I just think they should be segregated by sex, and that's all I really think about.
Okay. Do you want to answer my question?
Ooh.
I think I did I not? I think you should be
No.
separated by sex. So if you are a male, you should go to the male's bathroom. If
So
you're a
you
female,
think bathrooms should be separated by sex?
yes.
Okay.
That's what I
Is
just
there-
said. I said spaces, simple, should be separated by sex. That's it. Period.
Oh, okay. The question I was asking was, what would you prefer, like, if all bathrooms were unisex or something, which is the case in some countries.
Yeah, well, not North America, and I wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Am I
like
dodging your?
separate-
Am I dodging your question? Am I protecting my career?
No,
still?
now we got it.
Gotta
Now we
stick
Okay,
to
okay,
our
cool.
Western roots of sex segregation.
Do you have no unisex bathrooms in America?
We have
That's
some
very rare.
Wow, weird.
And like small businesses or small brick and mortar buildings or something like that.
Yeah, but it's not because they
There's
want them.
one
It's just because they don't have like enough money. To...
Usually, or you find it in like here in Silicon Valley in tech buildings and stuff like that, right? But it's obviously that's a very specific situation.
And even then, those are not like two sexes can use the bathroom at the same time type of bathroom. It's just like,
They have some. Some of them do.
oh, real? I don't think I've ever seen that in my entire life in the United States. A bathroom where both sexes can use it at the same time.
I know there have been a few buildings that I've been in where there have been men's and women's, and there's unisex with multiple stalls in it.
Really?
Yep.
But wouldn't it then be expected that everybody who uses it at the same time is the same sex?
No, as far as I know.
This is like blowing my mind. I've never even.
I don't know. I just went to the women's, but I knew about the unisex ones that were there that had stalls. So
Yeah, maybe I could see family, maybe. Sure, but not like strangers. You know what? I'm putting my chips down. There's no way this exists.
Probably
in the
not.
US.
Well, it's going to be for the company, right? It's a tech building. The whole company is that.
Oh, okay. I could see this for like newer generation businesses.
Yeah. But I haven't been into the unisex ones because I kind of just go to the women's ones because I don't have that issue here in Silicon Valley. You know, going into if like the building I'm working at or a friend's building or whatever, I've never had an issue going into the women's bathroom.
I see. Room with lots of sinks, then you walk into the stalls for each toilet. I've seen this in bars in Vancouver, British Columbia. That's not America, motherfucker. I keep saying America.
Yeah, we're not talking about third world countries here, guys.
Yeah, no shit.
You gotta
We're
catch
talking
up
about-
with the third world
we're-
countries then,
We're
I guess. aren't you?
talking about the developed West, okay?
Kind of implying you're worse than a third world country. I don't know, man.
Big buildings in Portland. Do they just have urinals in these bathrooms? I could see the separate stalls thing. I could see that working out. Holy fuck. Zonia, you gotta tell us. I've seen some bathrooms. When I was a little kid, I remember walking into a lobby one time and then like my mom grabbing me because I was like 6 years old and she was like, that's the woman's bathroom. I was like, what? You guys got like carpet in here? And like, yeah, all the bathrooms
Yeah.
were behind these padded doors. They had couches.
We do have the better bathrooms. That is true.
But I heard you motherfuckers are more disgusting. So I don't know how you deserve that.
No, I would say the men are way more disgusting.
Okay.
Just, I have
Take
the
your word for it.
contrast. I've experienced both.
Well,
I do
clean
wanna say-
bathrooms, and it was disgusting on both sides. In the men's bathroom,
True.
somebody took a shit on the floor. In the women's bathroom, someone stuck a used sanitary towel on the wall. So that was
Nah,
pretty grim.
women be sticking tampons and stuff in them bathrooms. If you
Yeah,
ask
but
anybody who's ever cleaned bathrooms, I think most of them are probably gonna say
That's what I've heard,
Yeah,
Abba.
but
Yeah.
tampons really, like, I don't see that as being that bad. Men have no fucking aim whatsoever. The whole place is just
How,
covered
do,
in piss.
do you know that women hover? Do you think women are aiming that well? Women are hovering to take their pisses.
Well,
They're-
that's true, but they still got better aim because there's a big old bowl right beneath them. But men, they whip that hose out and just flap it around all over the fucking place, spell their name, put their initials on the wall.
At every
It's
nightclub
like,
I've ever
Jesus
been,
fucking Christ.
at every nightclub I've ever been, all I've ever seen were women using the men's bathroom, not the other way around. Probably because they can't, but also because women say it's nasty there. So from my experience, especially if liquor's involved, the women's bathroom is more the disgusting one. But that's just personal anecdotal. I did want to say, despite the fact that like I guess I'd have what most people would call like kind of a turfy look on the whole trans thing, I will say that the framework that you guys presented today was probably some of the most reasonable ones in regards to this topic, and I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised. So for me, it gave me a lot to think about. So irrespective of like differences, I
Quit
thought you guys.
patronizing, you ass.
What?
I think he was
I'm
being
just messing.
genuine.
Okay, no, I'm serious. I
I think
literally
he's
never
used to
heard.
like polarized takes in this kind of
Yes.
arena.
Yeah. Would you guys actually require like a lot of nuance and like allow for different spaces? So I was actually really impressed. And that was interesting.
And I'm somebody I like to think of my positions like, again, like from scratch when I'm talking about them instead of just like going off of some rote position that I have or some talking points. So as I'm talking to somebody and getting feedback from them, and I'll reconsider things that I already previously had positions on and see if maybe they can be altered at the time. So I'm okay with having those kinds of nuanced discussions and maybe even adjusting my position, you know,
Thank
with
you.
new information.
I appreciate it. I was actually super happy when you joined and I got to learn a lot. I will say, like, most of the time when these conversations happen, people start saying stuff like, I don't want to have people debate my existence or my, I'm like, whoa, that sounds like so much. But, I mean, I understand for some people that kind of conversation is troubling, but it just feels like most of the time when I've seen these debates try to unfold, I've heard a lot of that rhetoric. So that
Some
was
people
kind of,
have genuine reasons to be sensitive about topics, and I'm saying sensitive and not too
Sure.
sensitive. So yeah, it takes a while for people to get comfortable talking about difficult things when it affects them personally.
sure.
Well, when you're constantly dealing with people who are like maliciously going out of their way to invalidate your existence and call you like a freak or
Yeah, like
or
Abba does
delusional,
on his YouTube videos.
you kind of get sensitive about these things. So I try to not be just like reacting to those negative experiences and really try and have a real conversation with people. if I
It's more
can.
interesting to speculate on compromises that could actually work than trying to divide people more than they already are.
Yeah, but that shit's boring.
Have you ever tried to speak on a trans-related topic and then non-trans person ever said to you, you're just a trans person, shut the fuck up?
You asking me?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I've had people say that I'm like mentally ill and disregard me that way.
That's
Like
wild.
I get that like from conservatives sometimes, but generally speaking, I actually have pretty good purchase with a lot of conservatives. So I think I have a better experience with conservatism than probably a lot of other people. Probably has
What if this
something to do
wasn't a
with my-
conservative? What if this was a liberal telling you, like, your opinion on these trans topics? Like, you're just a trans person. You shut up. How would that make you feel?
Oh,
It coming from a liberal, someone who's pro-trans and all that good stuff.
Well, what's,
I don't know that being liberal necessarily guarantees that they're going to be pro-trans.
No, this individual question, they are extremely pro-trans. And
and
the hypothetical I'm giving you.
and they dismiss my opinions on trans issues just because I'm biased because I'm trans.
Yeah, you have a disagreement with them.
Oh, well, I don't recall that specific thing happening. Maybe it hasn't, I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Probably my reaction to it would be, I would probably be disappointed in them because it would be, kind of terminating the thought process rather readily instead of actually trying to see whether or not I'm willing to have a good faith discussion with them on it.
True. Would you say, do you ever cringe when you hear non-trans people trying to defend trans issues very poorly? Do you ever like get extra cringed out when you see that?
Yeah, that does cause me to cringe a little bit. Especially, well, it kind of depends, but I think it bothers me the most when they do it in like the savior complex kind of way. And
I'm a
when
savior.
owners Yeah, that one probably bugs me the most because, especially when they're just getting everything wrong, or if they're going off of some like fringe online kind of like trans position, and they're doing the ultra try hard ally thing and running with it, and just that kind of thing bothers me a bit. But overall, it depends. It depends on how much audience capture they have. Like if they have a lot of audience capture,
They have a huge audience.
yeah, it bothers me a little bit more. If
What
they're
would you
just,
say
like,
to that person if you heard them saying this stuff?
Usually
Like they
I'll
said
be
that
like,
to you, and you were like, you
Usually-
had a disagreement with how they handled the trans debate. They did it super poorly, made trans people look silly, or their issues look silly. Like, what would you say to that person?
Usually I would say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you about this because I think you said some things that
Yeah.
I don't agree with, and then I think are a poor representation of what it is that we go through.
True. And then
And
they
then
they
have
said,
that-
look at you and said, you're just a trans person. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about.
wait,
Not
what's the
much I can do
implication
about
here? Is
that.
that she's just an individual, so she can't speak on the broader topic? Or are you trying to fish out that she might be called like a pick-me or something, or what?
No, I think the implication is that just because you're a trans person doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, and you should be correcting them, even though they may be doing a poor job of defending trans issues.
Yeah, well, I have the position that just because you have some like immutable trait or part of like a minority group doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the best person to speak on those issues, or even that you're the most informed on those issues. Like that's something that comes with being involved in observing and trying to address those issues or trying to communicate those issues, and you build that knowledge and skill over time, and that can be done by someone who isn't even a part of that minority status or part of that marginalized group. So I'm okay with certain people, like for instance Steven here, I think does a really good job communicating
Right.
about
What
trans
about
issues.
Hassan? Do you feel like Hassan Piker does a good job?
No. I don't think he does. Sometimes he has done some good communication at times, but other times he's done a shit job. Like when he had that, who was that person he had on who just was like, just
Christian Walker.
very anti-trans.
Right,
Christian
right.
Walker.
Yeah, and he was just bombing that one. Yeah.
Right. And some trans people had an issue with that, and then Hassan was just like, you're just a
Then
trans
Hassan was-
person. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and said you deserve the life you have or something, and I hope. that
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Let's go.
Yeah. Usually what I would try to do is I'd try to engage them in private and say, hey, I'd like to have a talk with you about this. Maybe we could have a talk on your stream or something, whatever. Oftentimes that doesn't get accepted when I do that, or it just gets ignored. If it continues going ignored and never gets addressed, maybe what I'll do is I'll cover it on my stream or something, or talk about it on someone else's stream and outline the scenario. So I try to do it that way just because I feel like I should cover that thing or talk about it and address it. If I have a concern about it, I should probably address it either with that person, or if they don't want to, then I should address it, on my platform. Right?
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Oh, that helps me answer my question.
Okay, real quick, Abba. It seems like you don't think that when I asked you what's the implication, you don't think that I meant from you towards Zonia, right?
No, no, I meant towards the person who said that towards the train.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gotcha,
Okay,
gotcha.
cool.
Hans wants in, by the way.
We have so many people in here. Do we need more?
I'll
Up
leave.
to you.
Why not? One of them's only here in principle and not in actuality, so.
That's true.
I think that's Destiny's way of saying they don't want to talk to that person. 'Cause they
No, no,
don't
no, no. I don't have any problem with that person. Fuck you. I'm just saying, like, do we need?
I'm just saying he hasn't been saying it. Do not unchain Zerka. You don't need that. He will just make everything about him. That's what he does.
Sonya, stop inviting more people.
I heard Destiny say, no, what I mean, and he just cut out. It was wild. But I think he's really focused on StarCraft.
It looks to me like the DGers, they want Hans. They're also saying free Zerka. So, I don't know. Take a pick.
Hey, man, listen, I've given this discussion everything I got, and I got nothing more problematic to say.
Oh, no, they're saying invite more people now.
Wait, but people are saying I'm being like a dick to you. I
What
just want
the
you to know.
fuck?
You know I'm being playful, right? Like, the whole like
Oh, yeah,
answer
no,
my
no.
fucking question thing or whatever.
Don't worry, do your thing, brother. I really don't get bothered by stuff
Okay,
like
fuck
that.
you.
Steven's about to lose in StarCraft, so he can't do anything else. He had an overwhelming lead, and he fucking choked it. So right now he's just...
I've never had an overwhelm. I've been behind all game. Okay.
Yeah, Steven, give us a topic.
Uh,
Bitch.
Jeb Tan is saying the people want Jeb. Jeb Tan, do you speak for the people, for yourself? What's going on with
What is
that?
Jeb?
Jeb is a pretty cool guy. Conservative-leaning panel, frequent panelist, streamer.
Cool and conservative. Is that possible?
Sure, they occur occasionally in the wild, usually as a byproduct of some form of pollution in the water.
Alright, but cool, conservative, and DGG. Is that possible?
Ooh, that probably means incel. That's not cool.
I guess we'll find out.
Do you guys like using terms like POC?
I'm okay with it.
Sure.
I mean,
Do you not like those terms?
Okay, if I'm referring to like people in the person, like if I'm saying, like I'll say my black friend, right? You know, something like that, I would say that instead. But if I were going to say like, well, POC issues or or communities of color or something like that, then I would kind of use that phrasing. But otherwise, I would say black person or something. I think that makes more sense when you're dealing in the personal to say that.
Most people of color hate it when you say POC.
Most? Do you speak for?
Absolutely. I
speak
also
for
speak
the
for
monolith?
I'll speak for Latinos as well when they say they hate Latinx.
Oh, Latinx. Yeah, I've definitely heard that. That's like, as soon as somebody says Latinx, there's like this beam of whiteness that fires up into the sky, and within hundreds of miles, everybody can see where the whitest person in the vicinity is.
Fucking disgusting. Can you guys hear the music in the background really loudly?
a little bit.
little.
Yes.
It's not very loud. No, I don't know why she said
very
that.
loud.
We can hear it a little bit.
Okay, sorry. My bad. There's people dancing in the back, so I'm turning off my mic every chance I get.
You got a party going on over there, huh?
Very hot and sweaty, and I'm here talking with you nerds.
Like in academia, POC is used very frequently. So
Yes.
I don't know how. Like, okay, so from your perspective, like, what do you think of that with academia using it? Do you think it makes more sense in academia than it does?
Actually, that's one of my
Okay.
biggest beefs. I think academics are so out of touch with the general populace, and the way that they have discourse using all these terms that generally turn off most of the public discourse in regards to the very important topic that they're talking about is why I think most academics have an inability to reach the general population.
Holy fuck! I'm in classes right now, and like, like in academia, they're using both of the worst terms.
BIPOC and
Like,
POC?
No. They're doing Latinx, and every time
Yeah.
the teachers say Latinx, it's like the syllables are super pronounced. Latinx, and like, I'm in fucking SoCal, so I have a bunch of classmates that are like Mexican and shit, and like, I always see them looking at each other like, Jesus Christ. they'll do that, or they'll do in like some of the readings, it'll be Latino/A. And then they'll arbitrarily switch the A and the O to not show any gender bias. It's like, just say fucking Latin people, right?
I always said Latino. That's just what everybody said around me, so that's what I said.
I just don't understand. We already call it Latin
people
America.
From Latin America, but
Like, we don't call it Latino America. We don't call it Latinx America, right? Like,
Latin
just say
is
fucking...
a language.
We're dealing with statistics for, like, you know, Latin Americans. So if that's the case, just say Latin people or something, right? Or fucking Latin American.
Yeah, well, like sometimes inclusivity just gets so try hard that it gets to the point of being cringe. And I think that's one example of that.
What are you? Wait, Abba, where are you? Are you like at a house party or what?
He did just explain this.
Wait, I wasn't listening. What did he say?
Clearly.
Wait, what did he say then, Kelly? Tell me.
Yes, so he's with us nerds instead of being with his friends in his house.
My question is, so is it a house party where people are dancing in his house to music? Is that what's going on right now?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Is it, do you live with other people or?
Oh yeah, I have a roommate.
Okay, gotcha.
And he's running a party. I've had a roommate for the last 8 years, the same one.
Makes sense.